Hey, what's up, guys? So, we're trying something a little bit different today. Before this podcast episode starts, I wanted to do a quick intro. Have you ever sat down with someone and they wanted to have a conversation with you about fascism? I can't say that's a conversation I've particularly had the pleasure of participating in the past, but that's exactly, I think, the main subject matter of this episode. So in this episode, I sat down with an anonymous androgynous Zer who wanted to tell me about the merits of fascism. And being the good listener and conversationalist that I am, I let them do it. So without further ado, this is your chance to check out now or continue listening, and we'll see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Yeah, you have to stop the terrorists. I mean, that's just a fact of life. We have to stop the terrorists.
Whoever you call a terrorist, that's who you get to stop.
That's who you have to stop.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you decide who the terrorists are eventually.
You actually fund and create the terrorist and then stop them.
Well, you
That's
fund
what's
and create
incredible.
the terrorist. You create the idea that terrorism is bad. You create the label of terrorism and create that as a label, meaning we can kill these people freely. You can hate these people because they are the terrorists. They are the unwanted. They are the evil ones doing the evil acts. They're not revolutionaries. They're not liberators. They're terrorists.
I did not know in North Korea they're still like they consider it the revolution. Like that's how they
Yes.
still push their propaganda.
The revolution will never
Yeah,
end.
and they're like the revolution. We're doing it for the glory of the revolution, and it's like what? Oh my gosh, this man's burning.
This movie is great, by the way.
Yeah, I feel like I need to
Oh,
watch
yeah,
it.
you need to watch it. You need to watch it.
Should I skip ahead?
I mean, you're gonna miss some like good
I'm gonna
footage of
thumb
people
around
getting
a little
set
bit,
on
though.
fire and shit, man. I wouldn't jump too much.
I'm gonna thumb around a little bit. I don't know if I have 12 minutes. You know, you ever look at a YouTube video and you're like,
I ain't watching 12
yeah,
minutes.
you're like,
of
let me
shit.
just scrub this a little bit. I don't know if I have 12 minutes for this
Yeah.
content. It's probably what people are doing with
Oh, it
this
is on a
podcast
swivel.
right now,
It
dude.
is on a swivel. Holy shit.
Yeah, you can change all the angles you want, dude. The angles of your heart's desire.
Yeah. I just feel like there's times when I'm back here and it's not as good, and then I get up here and it's great, but I don't want to be too
Take it
too
with
up
you.
here. Yeah.
Just
Oh, I
take
can
it
just
with
take
you.
it with you. Oh, okay. Yeah.
You got to go back.
Okay.
Just take it with you.
Well, I wish I just had like a mic
Got
in
a
my
care in the
hand.
world. Nah, you don't want to hold a mic the whole time.
Yeah, you're right. I don't. I just kind of want to jack it off.
Oh, I need to crack my neck though.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So I guess we can just start talking anytime we want.
We already are. That's the
yeah.
the miracle
yeah.
of it.
Oh, it is the miracle.
Would you like me to introduce the people? Is that what you're waiting for? Are you waiting for an official introduction?
I don't need an introduction.
Welcome to the Edge Condition Podcast, episode 8, with my first anonymous guest, whose
Okay.
name and likeness I shan't reveal at his request. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Call me K.
We can talk about whatever. I'm not going to call you that, but we can talk about whatever we want,
I mean,
whenever
if you
we
needed
want, dude. I'm going to call you Professor X. That's what I'm going to call you.
to. Nobody called.
Since you don't believe in
Xavier
Professor X.
Did I feel like the only person that called him Professor X was Wolverine, and he hated the shit out of Wolverine for that. I guess
he resented Wolverine for calling him Professor X, even though that's his name. And he named
it's
them
not
all.
his fucking name. It's
Well, they
Charles
weren't
Xavier.
They weren't the Xavier men.
Well, listen,
you know,
the
they
people
were
in
the
the X-Men are like just those like Jean Grey is in the X-Men, Cyclops is in the X. I'm just saying there's a specific group of people in the X-Men. The X-Men aren't anybody but the X-Men, and they make like some side squad motherfuckers from time to time, but they're not they're not the main people.
How badass of a cartoon was the X-Men, though?
Oh, really badass.
So good, dude.
Yeah, it's about a superior race of people being oppressed by an inferior people.
Who's the superior race? The mutants.
Mutants are obviously superior. They're human
What
beings.
were they trying to brainwash
but
me
with powers.
when I was watching that?
What were they trying to brainwash into you?
Yeah.
To hate yourself for being better than others.
So So the mutant,
The mutants are better than everyone else,
right?
and they're hated.
And they struggled with the
Just
acceptance of their
of their people,
of their mutanity.
well, of their superiority.
Right.
Yeah, which is kind of like a funny thing.
And then at the end, Professor X is always like, well, we have to treat people properly, even though they don't give us credit.
And it's funny because his foil is Magneto, and Magneto is a Jew who survived the Holocaust, and Magneto is also the person who believes the mutants, the superhumans, are superior beings and should rule over the lesser
Yes,
humans.
that's true.
Yes, and he also at a point, I think, I don't know what I think in a comic he has also espoused the belief to like exterminate many humans, to lower their numbers
Yeah.
against them.
He
Something
kind of
like that.
doesn't give a shit,
I
for
think
sure.
that's in House of M, and if somebody's like, "Oh, that's not in House of M," like, fuck you.
Somebody's like that, for sure.
There's going to be somebody.
There's
who's,
always someone who's like everything,
Yeah.
That's what's amazing about
House of M, and he doesn't say anything like that. Okay, well, it just it's a Magneto thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's overall Magneto.
Sure, I mean, it fits his character regardless.
Yeah. So I guess
Even if no one wrote that in,
Yeah.
like, his character fits sort of that description. You could say that about him based on his characteristics.
Yeah, Magneto is.
You're right.
at
He is
his
the
heart.
character foil for Professor X, though.
Yeah, he is a fascist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he?
That's
For his superior race. Yeah, I see what you're
Well,
saying.
not. That's not what
The race of
fascism
mutants.
is. That's not what fascism is. Fascism
You
is.
tell me what you think fascism
Well, I want.
is. and I'll
Actually, I
tell
want to
you
know
if-
you.
and
I
I'll
want to know
tell
what you feel that fascism.
Hold
is.
on,
How do you feel about it?
How about this? You tell me what you think fascism is, and I'll tell you if that's right or not, okay?
I would personally like to hear like a kind of your belief, your feelings on it.
I don't
first.
really have a lot of feelings on fascism. It's a word. It's overused. It's used improperly. It's the wrong people are labeled. A lot of people use like Hitler, right?
Oh,
As
yes.
their example of
They like
fascism.
to go back to Hitler a lot.
I see fascism as like a supremacy form of government, basically, as deep as I understand it. It's basically a form of this group is the superior group, and that's the group who rules and makes the rules, and that's about as deep as I go on fascism. I mean, I don't. And if we want to talk about fascism, I'm game, but I
This
don't.
is it.
This is when I go
This
to
is
like
it. Hey,
now
the podcast, the topic that I wanted to discuss with you today,
the topic for today.
the merits of
Fascism.
fascism.
The merits of
The
fascism.
merits of
Okay,
fascism.
hold on. Let's look up what.
Oh, I know what it is. I know what it's
And
going
no
to
one can
say.
deny that everything has. Well, I mean, Wikipedia is not.
Just Google it. Google it and look at the
Wikipedia
definition
drops
on the
a
right.
lot of like
Bullshit.
right wing white supremacy kind of
Yeah.
references
But
to their
fascism
fascism.
isn't at all racially related.
Would you agree that it's political ideology?
And most certainly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we're getting somewhere. Let's just type in the word. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
look over
what
there
you
on the
get.
right.
Look what you get.
Fascism is a form of far right,
It's always
authoritarian,
far right, but it didn't used to be.
ultranationalism.
It didn't used to be defined as far right.
Fascism is actually whatever it wants to be.
Exactly.
We live in fascist state right now.
I would agree with that.
Yes. I mean, when you win an election, you walk down the promenade and you wave and smile. When you lose an election and steal it, you have to put up barbed wire, you have to put up fences, you have to station soldiers
Right.
so no one takes it from you.
Exactly.
And if the people take it from you, they take it from you.
Well, the people are pussies, though.
Well, the people are
For
fools.
sure.
The people don't know what they want.
So, the merits of fascism, though.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that will get you in trouble because people are like, "What are you going
Oh,
to say
yes.
something positive about?"
No, they'll
fascism?
immediately call me a racist and destroy my life over it.
Are you a racist?
No. Just like Mussolini said, race is 95% of feeling.
Okay.
And that is, I think, generally
What's the other
true.
5%? Indoctrination.
Genetics.
Oh, actual
actual
race.
race. Yes.
I see.
The actual thing that makes up
see.
a race. That thing that doesn't exist, but then does exist, but then doesn't exist, but then does exist. You know,
Sure.
that whole mental gymnastics, backwards bending bullshit.
Yeah.
But so we live in a fascist state now, and actually we have for many years.
Okay.
You don't have any rights, and then they've been eroded before you were even born. Every
Sure.
single one of those quote unquote rights has a condition. You can have this right if you meet these requirements.
Sure.
If you don't meet this requirement, you don't have this right.
Give me an example.
You're put into prison.
Okay.
You're not allowed to have a phone.
Okay.
Freedom of speech.
Well, okay.
Freedom of association.
Okay.
Same way. In the 50s,
Does a phone equal speech, though?
I mean,
You know?
it's contacting with people. It's talking with people. I think any means of communication is
Is
speech.
speech.
If money is speech,
And since that
then speaking is speech.
and I think once that form of communication, it's kind of like the quote unquote gray area that's existed with the internet for a while, where it's like, do the rights apply? Can these gigantic tech companies ban certain voices and whatever?
Yeah.
And it's been like a gray area of like, well, how do we apply the rules of free speech to this? And it's I tend to agree with you that like if it's becoming a mainstream form and easily accessible daily mainstream form of communication, it has to be protected by free speech.
Oh yeah,
But of course, it's not going to be because we're not, like you're saying, we're not doing things the right way. It's all an illusion, and the idea of free speech is like, yeah,
Also an
it's free
illusion.
until we say it's not free.
Well,
Basically,
it's free until the mob shows up in front of your house and burns it down, attacks you, makes you feel terrified in your home, and then the police do nothing about it. That's what fascism is. You see, you don't need laws to have fascism. You don't need a law that says we're fasci. You don't
Right.
need that. You just need fascists to show up to people's homes and intimidate
do
them.
the dirty work, right?
Yeah, like right now, when you see, Antifa groups like that show up to people's houses and intimidate them, that's fascism.
It's died down quite a bit, the coverage of that type of activity.
I mean, it still
Wouldn't you say?
occurs, but it
Sure.
has died down. But that's because the media doesn't want to play it up. They don't want
I-
those things to go on
Do you-
because Biden is the master.
Do you think the funding of it has died down? Because I think
No.
I think a big part of the whole Antifa protest showing up at people's houses is that somebody's cutting checks behind the scenes. In fact, I don't even
Yeah.
think that's I don't even think that's a theory in my mind. I'm
Well,
like,
there's
obviously
a fucking
someone's
New
cutting
York
checks.
Times article about it.
And it's all to trash. It's all to trash Trump, but now we don't have Trump, so they don't need you don't need the leverage that Antifa brings to create the story. You don't need that as much because now you've got your guy in there.
Have you read that article?
So that's why a lot of stuff has died down. I have not, but I'm
pull it
happy
up.
to search for
Just pull up fortified election article.
it. Should I type in New York Times too?
Maybe.
Fortified election, New York Times. What does that mean? Fortified election. The secret bipartisan campaign that saved the 2020 election.
That's it. That's the fucking
I
article.
think I remember seeing this
yeah,
article, man.
Scroll down it. It tells you
Yeah,
exactly
the shadow
how
campaign. Yep.
exactly how they did the whole thing.
They always reveal their hand.
Oh yeah, afterwards.
They have to,
yeah.
or the karmic debt
yeah,
is not paid.
it's
Like,
a Jewish thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
They're always trying to.
But I don't even think
you.
you have. I don't think you even have. I don't even think like. I don't think it's Big Jew that's like controlling either. I just think they see the power of some of these principles and they use them. So I don't know if I necessarily believe in
I would put Jewry right now, international Jewry, into two camps: the international Jews and then the fascistic Jews who have their own ethno-state. So those are the two groups of Jews. And I understand that in Israel it's not necessarily an ethno-state, but it is ruled by ethno-nationalists.
Right, and let me get this. If we're going to use the word Jew, like we're definitely getting in trouble talking about. I mean, you could
cut
talk
this
about,
part out.
We could talk about
Cut it out.
whites, blacks, Asians, and we could say whatever we want. And people would get upset. But man, when you talk about Jew, it's like probably going to be.
Yeah.
But are you racist towards Jews?
I don't believe in the idea of racism.
There you go. So you're not.
Yeah. But no, anybody
Just want to clear that up.
Any human being prefers their own group of people. Every single person does that. That is not unnatural. It is not wrong.
What is it?
What is what?
You're telling me what it's not. What is it to prefer your own group of people?
Natural.
Okay.
A cat prefers another cat to a dog.
And is that why?
But it doesn't mean two cats always get along.
Well, here's one thing where people are going to be immediately, oh, a cat prefers a dog. Oh, those are two different species.
Animals.
It's like
Yes.
saying a gorilla doesn't prefer a human. They prefer a gorilla, even though.
Well, to those people, I would ask you, is race a social construct or a genetic construct?
Oh, they'll say it's a social construct.
Yeah, but they're
for
wrong.
Sure.
They're wrong.
They're social
Yeah.
constructionists.
They want it. They want science when they think it proves something
Absolutely.
for them, and they don't want science when it doesn't. Right now,
100%.
people in the scientific community, they love to say, "Oh, racism doesn't exist because of this," or this is racist because of this. But really, they're all just paid to say those things. They're not really scientists. They're not working through anything. And the thing they don't ever do is refute the idea. They don't ever come to the genetics or any of the science and refute it. They just say, that's wrong to say. That's socially wrong. Not it's scientifically wrong, but it's socially wrong to do so. And I can understand if you feel that something is socially wrong and you want to change it in your society and get rid of quote unquote racism.
Okay.
But by activating on that, by following and doing critical race theory, you just create more racism.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's their point. They
But
don't want less racism. They want
no, they want
more
more.
racism.
Absolutely.
Yes,
There is
exactly.
no like you're completely naive if you think the powers that be, in my opinion, if you think the powers that be are doing things to make things
Better. Yeah.
better and not to make them more controlled, because once you attain power, the way you hold on to power is you
Mhm.
control. That's why people say like, oh, he holds all the cards. Like that idea is what
Well, are you aware of
the
like the
power
keys to power?
the
The
keys
idea
to
of the keys
power.
to power. Someone can only rule anything if they have the keys to power. So when you become, like, let's say you become a fascist dictator. Let's say you become a king. You become a monarch. The thing that you need
Sounds
to hold,
glorious.
yeah, the thing that you need to hold power isn't like the support and love of your people or anything like that. It
Sure.
is the powerful people around you who hold the keys to power. So if you want, a treasury, you're going to have to spend some money on those keys to power to get their allyship.
Okay.
So you have to set those things up, and it doesn't matter. Fuck, it doesn't matter if it is a monarchy, a democracy, anything, a dictatorship. You have to have the keys of power, the people powerful close to you. And in this country, it's corporations, large corporations, very
Right.
powerful people. They're people, of
How would
course.
you what would you identify as the power structure in the nation of America? Like how obviously generically we're like, oh well, you have the executive branch, the legislative branch, you have
Oh,
the judicial branch, but clearly that's not
that's not
that's
true.
the on paper
Hmm.
that's what the structure is. But what do you think the actual sort of power
Well, I
structure?
can tell you
What's
all
the
about it.
conglomerate?
I can tell you it is the corporate core. Um, you know that book that Margaret Atwood wrote, the Handmaid's Tale.
Yes.
Okay, that book is shitty, and the shitty stupid things. Because basically the book is, what if Christians acted like Muslims?
Right.
I love when I tell that to people. Oh, they get so fucking mad about it.
Muslims get a bad rap.
Yeah, I'm sure they get a bad rap. Um,
I think they've been demonized quite a bit in our media to justify wars in the Middle East.
they should be demonized. They worship a demon moon god. They worship a false god.
Okay.
Yeah, fuck Muslims.
Right.
Yeah, the demon moon god. Cut some of that part out there. You can
Maybe,
keep the
maybe
demon
not.
moon god part in, but
Cut some of that. Here's the thing. You
when
said
I
cut some
say
of that
that,
part
don't
out.
be, you're not
If you
gonna do
think
that.
I'm going back and
Yeah.
watching a 2-hour podcast
Cut
and
it.
cutting some
Dude, I
parts
cut
out?
the stuff out of my podcast.
No way,
I,
dude.
I clean that shit
That's
up.
way too much scrubbing through a
Oh, no.
podcast for me.
Well, I just don't want to feel too censored or just, too off my game.
Don't, dude.
It's not like I just read Mein Kampf and I'm coming in here like, motherfucker, I got everything written down. But let me tell you a little bit about my political wing.
This is not a sensorial podcast. Okay?
Oh, I understand.
This is a no holds barred podcast. The people come in, they speak their mind, they say what they want to say, and then they go back out into the world.
So in 2012, I read for the first time Mein Kampf,
Okay.
and it opened my eyes to the idea that fascism isn't bad.
Okay.
I read literature after that, of course.
Hence your topic, the merits of fascism.
Yeah, there are merits to fascism.
I
It's
believe
just
it.
right now, the fascist in power are not the fascist you agree with.
Okay.
And what we really want is the fascists we agree with in power,
Okay.
right? Isn't it?
Mm,
Would you want fascism?
I don't know.
You get
No.
to. Why not? You don't have any rights now.
Here's why.
They can be taken away.
Here's what I would want. I would want local systems. Okay.
You want Oswald Mosley's fascism.
I think that I think the founding fathers, if the story is accurate, how it was told to me, how it was taught to me,
Mm-hmm.
I think they were on the right track, creating a document that governs the land, a bare bone, but it's it's supposed to be a bare bones core principles document. And then what do they say? Hey, we're going to leave the rest that's not that's covered in this document. That's up to the states. That's up to the individual groups of people who live in individual areas to decide for themselves how they want to further govern because obviously we have to have government. I'm not a person who believes like,
Oh yeah, you
I'm not an
can't.
anarchist. You have to
Yeah,
have a system, a hierarchical system of control. It's
yeah.
just
Well,
how much pressure is that boot going to put on the throat of the average man in that system of control. So what I ideally, and I'm not the most like politically, I'm it's not like I haven't studied a ton of political systems to where I have the best
oh
idea, so I'm not
gosh.
claiming that. But I feel like for the way I live my life, what seems ideal to me is that I govern myself. And where I expect my fellow man to operate under a set of principles, whether it be the Ten Commandments, the Bill of Rights, whatever. I expect you to operate in a way that does not impede my progress,
Yeah.
my pursuit of happiness. That's why I think the founding fathers laid it out pretty well. And then I think I here's what I think: government should actually function the opposite of the way it functions now. So we're like how you're saying we're already under fascism because
Yes.
we're in a top down system
Mm-hmm.
where the federal government has
Where
attained so much power, influence, and control that now they're you're going from this huge power at this huge figurehead power at the top, and then it's propagating like it's barely even propagating through the system and reaching the average man anymore. It's like directly affecting the average man. So it almost feels like, Biden decrees and then
no, he
I feel
doesn't.
the effects of it. No, but I'm saying it feels that way
I understand it feels that way.
today more than it ever did. So my system ideally is the opposite of that. I, as the head of my family, decree how my family will live, and you still have to hold on to the principle that however you will live will not impede on the right of others to live a happy, well, I don't even like to use the word happy, but a what they consider a meaningful, purposeful life, as long as they're also living in a way that does not impede on you doing that, right? So that doesn't mean, well, hey, I don't think this certain race should exist. So in my system of governing that I'm laying out, it's like if someone believes that way, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, so what? If that's the rules that they live by, you're
But
going to
that's
let them. It's like, no, there's a reasonable expectation that you're going to let others like live in peace with themselves, and you're not going to come storm on my land and try to take it. So I basically, to sum it up, I think government should operate the opposite. I, as the head of a household, should set the rules for my family. I should get together with the neighbors in my neighborhood, and we should all talk and say, hey, we all live here in proximity to each other. How do we feel like we want to run this? That should go up to the township. That can go up to the county level, and it goes up, and there's actually less power at each stage. And the most power lies with the individual to pursue what they feel is important in lives for their success, with the caveat that we're all going to agree on a few standard principles up front. And I think that's what the Old Testament was basically laying out for us and teaching us, hey, you got to have some governing principles to govern groups of people. There have to be some. It should be less as you go up the chain,
I
though.
like your rosy ideals, but in
Sure. Oh, they're
reality,
very
that is
rosy.
not how things work.
Yeah,
It is never how things work. I think
absolutely not.
you are entirely your worldview is shaped by individualism. You are a
Absolutely.
Western individualist, and you don't look around at the collective around you and realize that sometimes they become the problem. You talk about people who are around you who respect your ideals and your ability to do, but they don't anymore.
Right.
And they want to come here and stop you when they find something they don't like. If
Yeah.
you speak out and say a thing they don't like, they silence you. If you
Right.
if you commit to something they don't like, they destroy that thing. If you are on a platform and they don't like you, they take out the platform or they take you away from the platform.
Absolutely.
That is fascism. We already live in a fascistic state. But like I said, again, just the fascists in power are the fascists we don't like. And when I say we, I know that right wing is connected to fascism, but really, I think the idea of fascism is an idea of a society that accepts the individual, but tells the individual that the group is important, that you need to be a part of this group, a part of your people, your Volk, as Hitler put it.
Okay.
And the Volk isn't blood. The Volk isn't genes. The Volk is the people of your nation. The Volk for Hitler was the Germanic speaking peoples. And you see other nations occasionally do the Volk shit. They do the Russians, the Russophones in Crimea. So we'll take Crimea. And then you see, the Francophones. Well, this is a Francophone nation. These are our people. That's how people now can kind of get away with a little bit of that kind of old school fascism. Like, these are my people. And I think we could get back to that idea. All Americans are our people. Every other American is part of us. But
Okay.
the thing that happens with internationalism, with global homogenization, globo homo, is that those things, a singular people in a nation, become impossible because all borders are dissolved and all people have to become internationalists. And the internationalists that rule over everyone have the most power because they were already internationalists before you were. And they are the ones that get to fly around and rule the nations, and you are the one that has to live in the nation.
So lay out for me why me and everyone else, even though obviously I don't believe in it.
Oh,
So,
obviously.
but
And
lay out for me why internationalism, like, because you said like every American is part of every other American. Like
Yes.
that's our Volk.
That's our
right?
nation. That's our people,
We
our
should sort
culture.
of take a certain level of pride in that makes us feel like, hey, I look out for my fellow man.
I
and
wouldn't
this-
say pride.
Okay, but I'm
Pride
saying
is
it.
not a
That's
is not
okay.
a good quality.
Okay, but so I don't want to put words in your mouth. So I mean pride in a way that it makes you feel not guilty for the fact that you're an American and that if you see your neighbor struggling, they're your brother.
They're your family.
They're your family.
Yeah, they're your
nation
national family. They're your cultural
so
family.
You should help them also not to struggle. They're not your enemy. We're all in this together as a part.
Yes.
So let me ask you this then, and I feel like I'm just trying to think of what would go through other people's minds where they might try to shoot holes in an argument. So
let me interject really quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you your brother's keeper?
I would say so. Yes.
We are our brother's keeper.
Yes.
Say so as well.
So why can our brother not be international? And actually let me answer why first. Here's why I think. You tell me if this hits.
Oh, I know exactly what I'll tell you.
Here's why your brother can't be international, because it gives too much power to the top of the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. So if you put us all together under something, now my ability to influence is it's like diluting a solution. I have a concentrated solution called America, and it's 50,000 parts to one, right? Well, when I bring in 3 million other particles into that, now it's 3.5. Now it's 3,050,000 parts to one. So my solution at the bottom tier is massively diluted. So now I have 3,050,000 trying to voice their opinion and feel heard and like they can live a happy life and they have some influence. But the 50,000 got a bigger slice of the pie, therefore they had a bigger influence. So that's why I think internationalism, like you said, globo homo.
Yeah.
If we homogenize, then
We lose all our culture. We lose all people.
certainly we lose our culture.
Yeah,
Okay, so
we
what's
lose
your
all people. We lose all culture in global homogenization, and there will be a ruling class over all people, a singular world government basically ruled by the richest. Which is kind of almost what we have.
It is. No, I would agree with that.
Well,
So
there are still large groups that are in the shadows of each of. There's like 3 or 4 powerful world groups that are all vying against one another to become the singular world power and kind of like dictate policy. It's kind of where humanity is always.
Do you think China is number one right now at that?
At what? Anything?
At what you just said?
No.
Like, are they the top one governing for international power?
They're
Or
probably
governing, that's the wrong word, but vying for it.
they're one of the weakest.
They are?
Yeah.
Interesting.
China is a paper tiger. They can't put together a fucking jet engine, and the technology has existed for over 80 years.
Right.
Like, they really can only copy things, and they
Right.
really do very poor work in everything just because of the way their state and government is set up. And
Right.
I will say that China is way less of a communist country and pretty fascist in general, but I just think that the way they carry things out is foolish.
Isn't it interesting that I bet people would call you racist for what you just said, for like for labeling something as China and then saying like a negative thing about it,
Yeah.
even though you even said in that statement, it's their system of governing that really holds them back and hinders them. You're not saying the individuals there aren't capable of learning. You're not saying the individuals there aren't capable of doing great things. But it's funny. People will hear that statement and be like, you just said negative about a nation state. Like, you're a racist against Chinese.
I'm a racist against the nation.
I mean, right. And so that's how like, well, you even said yourself, like, you don't even believe in racism.
I mean, I really don't. Just because of that conception
What does that
and
mean?
like alternation of definition.
What does it mean not to believe in racism?
I just don't believe that that's a real thing. Like every single person has a preference for those who look themselves. And if you don't like someone because they are not part of your preferred group, that's fine. Like one kind of species of jaguar doesn't like a different kind of subspecies of
Sure.
jaguar.
Sure.
And you can't too come into humanity and tell us that race is a social construct, but then point out a bunch of fucking genetic markers that you can say this person has these genetic markers,
Yeah.
so they're the person I can criticize.
Right.
So and that's what is done now.
Right.
It was what is done in the past. But
You can't cry racism and then have
then
like
do it.
critical race theory that basically demonizes
well,
white people.
hold on. Critical race theory, I don't think like just the way that it is taught in a negative fashion towards white people. But really,
Right.
what critical race theory teaches is the superior of whites over all others. Because whites oppress but are not able to be oppressed, and non-whites cannot oppress and are able to be oppressed.
Right.
So you tell me, out of that two groups, one group that can do a thing and the thing can't happen to them, and the other group, the thing can happen to them and they can't do the thing,
Right.
who's better?
Right.
I want the better people.
So it's almost like critical race theory is inverted to teach white supremacy.
Yes, it teaches you
It's
to be a white supremacist, but guilty
Wow.
about it.
You're right.
And it's very easy
That's incredible.
for you to flip that in your mind, because
Yeah.
that's was my experience in life. I was really hardcore leftist. I
Really?
was a registered Democrat. I voted for Obama. I was so happy.
You voted for Obama.
Oh yeah, twice.
Interesting.
Twice.
Twice. So you were
I
even,
voted for Obama twice.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then I voted for Trump, of course.
yeah.
And then it was just such a shit show. I
Yeah.
just couldn't believe any of that.
Yeah. I'm watching you drink that beer, and I want to get into that. I did not realize you voted for Obama twice, and I'll get into my experience with Obama too. But now I like really want to go get one of those beers.
Go get it. Go
So
get it.
I'll either cut
Yeah,
this
yeah.
out or you entertain the people for a second.
All right.
Maybe do one of your songs.
No, not a song. Well, everyone, I don't think this is going to get cut out while he's grabbing the beer, but I guess I'll read the definition of fascism in case we didn't really hit it earlier. Fascism is a form of authoritarian, ultra-nationalism characterized by dictatorial power, forcible suppression of opposition, and strong regimentation of society and of the economy. And I think it says the ideology came to prominence in early 20th century Europe.
What is this?
I just read the definition of fascism pretty
Oh.
clearly for everyone. In case I think we'd gone over it, but I just wanted to clearly read it and not say that part where it says far right, because the idea of anything being right or left is also
It's really stupid. I
it's
agree.
not correct.
Fascism doesn't only work if you have, and when people think right, they think conservative, and they tie it all together. So it's like fascism doesn't only work if you have one particular set of values. You can have extreme set of values that control a population, and you can go extremely right or extremely left. So there's no point in defining it as far right.
Yeah, because it can be a different all different kinds of ideologies.
Then you could just as well be far left, but still implement a fascist system.
Take a sip of that.
Absolutely,
Tell
I
me,
will.
hey, tell me what you think about the Paradiso. Oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. Definitely cut that out. You really have to not do,
What?
you know,
You said Paradiso?
locational stuff, right?
No. I do locational stuff.
Oh, okay, well, people know where I
I have a
generally-
tattoo of Georgia on my arm, just so everyone knows, okay?
Fuck, don't tell people that.
Well, Georgia.
They're gonna come at you.
Well, that's not. That's
So, well, let's
I
go
mean,
back
bring
to
it
a
on, I
thing.
guess.
Let's go back to a thing we were talking.
what do you want to do?
Remember you were talking
I
about
own
kinda how
guns, just so everyone knows.
You wanted that society where there's a local government and then there's like a larger government. Like each part of that government goes from the individual up to the highest order, where the
Yeah.
individual is the one that makes the decision factors in each of those steps.
It's like a pyramid where
It's an inverted pyramid, is what you want.
it is it's exactly an inverted pyramid. The
Yeah.
smallest point is the most powerful. Actually, it may be a verted
Maybe
pyramid.
Inverted, yeah.
Basically,
Regular
the guy
pyramid
on the
stuff.
top though is not
Is he's the individual,
It's yes,
and it should go
and
down
then
at
it
the
should
bottom.
spread down,
Should be the
so
politician.
the groups get bigger, but the
Yes.
power gets less.
But you exist in the inverted pyramid.
Yeah, and you would call it inverted because right now
Really, it's not inverted. The
it's
smallest
not,
group of
but
people at the top.
it's an
are the-
inversion of our power structure because
Yeah,
our
it's-
power structure right now is the opposite of
Yeah,
that.
you'd want to flip it.
And I don't think it's. Let me just put a disclaimer on that. I don't think it's possible in this realm. Okay, in this realm that we exist in this reality that we occupy, I don't think that will ever come to pass. Now, I do think the reality of it is the individual is one of the most powerful things that exist if you truly focus and ascertain, your power and what you're capable of. Like someone, as much as he's hated, someone like Donald Trump, like rose a part of his meteoric rise throughout his adult life. I mean, from like the age 30, he's building buildings already, right?
Oh yeah.
So a part of that rise was sure. Oh, he had help. He had a loan from his dad. What I don't care about any of that. His ability to like believe in himself and push things forward. That's why he became what's known as an icon. Like that's
Yeah.
what an icon is. It's a powerful singular image, and
Yes.
that can be an individual too.
It's his confidence. It's the thing that he puts forward, and he is so assured of himself. That's why he succeeds.
Right. So I believe in the power of the individual in that way, and I do think it's one of the most powerful things that exist. However, I don't think that when we talk about inverting the pyramid and setting up this system of government, I don't actually believe that's possible on the same scale that we see like an American government existing today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, whether maybe that's because of my worldview or the time I'm born into, I don't think it'll ever happen in this realm. But I do think that we can still break off without the government breathing down our neck, and we can purchase land, live on that land, protect that land, and sort of create a micro version of that government and live it out. But it doesn't mean that the boot comes off your
Yeah.
neck. It means you can separate from the boot. It might eventually find you, it might not, but you can separate it from it and live sort of as much as your individual life as you can.
Anybody can go now live away from fascism that they experience in the world and just go live in like the Alaskan wilderness. I love your high ideal of individualism, but let me tell
Thank
you,
you.
in a fight, one man versus 20
Versus many.
always loses.
Right.
There's never going to be unless that man is the superhuman.
Unless he's a Jin Ro.
Yeah,
And
unless
it's
he's
South Korean protesters.
well.
See, we've come full circle, dude. That's how we
full
do it
circle.
here.
But let me go back to a thing we were talking about earlier. So
Sure.
remember, we were talking about like that community that you wanted, that form of governance that you wanted. That is what fascism can offer. It offers
People listening are like,
people.
is
I know.
this guy
They're
really
like,
trying to sell him
wow.
on fascism right now?
I really am trying to sell people on fascism because let me tell you,
I love it. I don't think
leader
anyone's
at
doing
the
this.
top, the leader at the top must be the most responsible for everything individual. That leader can't shirk duties. That leader can't say it wasn't my fault, it was the guy before me. That leader has to accept the responsibility. And if it gets bad, that leader doesn't get voted out. None of that happens. That leader dies. And the next dictator comes and takes power. And the structure for a fascistic government from the top down is one of experts. You don't need a bunch of politicians talking bullshit in some parliament making laws about things they don't know about. So in your fascist government, you set up the people that make laws, the people that you want to know how to make laws. Like you make law about medicine, this community or this group that makes that law, or this parliament, this Congress, whatever you want to call it, whatever group that you set up to do these kind of laws, and each expertise has a group. So you don't have doctors making decisions about financial markets, and you don't have people that know stuff about financial markets making decisions for doctors, because that's our issue right now in this country, is that a lot of people that make laws don't know what they're talking about, just want to line their pockets or line the pockets of the place they're from so they can continue to get elected.
That's absolutely undeniably true, your last statement.
Yeah,
100%.
and in a fascistic state, you don't have that. Because if someone
do you
tries to do that, the dictator gets rid of them.
How do you control it?
Control what?
How do you make the dictator take ultimate? Because I love the idea
Of the dictator with
here's
the
what I love the
power and
idea
responsibility.
of. If yeah, and let me just kind of lay it out, since it's long form podcast. I'm just going to be a little wordy with it. Here's the idea of, and I think many leadership people would agree with this. Like some of my influences in life will all say, even if it's one in particular, okay, Grant Cardone. If you're probably not familiar with it, he's more of a sales guy, super successful in multifamily real estate development and investment, right? I shouldn't even say development, because he doesn't build them; he just buys them.
Yeah. He's a
But one of
speculator.
his principles is like ultimate responsibility. Like even he's given the example before, like you rear-ended someone. Someone rear-ended you in an accident. You step out of the car. Obviously, legally, you don't take responsibility. But in your brain, your willingness to take responsibility is so strong that you take responsibility for being rear-ended. As in, if you want to rise to the top and be your best self, you take on the maximum amount of responsibility and accept that
Yes.
everything is not your fault, but is on your shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if like if your wife bails on you, you don't say, "Oh, she's a bitch," whatever. It's
It's
like
your fault.
it's you. If your
Yeah.
business falls apart, it was you.
It was
No
you.
one screwed you. Even if they did, you still have to take. Then you did business with the wrong person. You did the wrong transaction.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's about taking. So how do we get?
Let me boil down what you're trying to say.
How do we get a leader to adhere to that?
Yeah. You were saying there are no rights, there are only duties.
Mm,
You have to take responsibility. You don't have a right to a thing. You don't have a right not to
I
be
still believe in
rear-ended.
rights, though.
I know you believe in them, but they do not functionally exist in reality. You can say
don't
that you
exist?
have a, rights do not exist. You could say
me think
that
about
God
that.
granted me this right.
Okay.
Then someone's going to go,
I do
well,
say that.
let me take that right away from you. Where's your God to stop me? Or is it just you? It's just you.
I see.
Yeah. You can
I
have
see your
God on your side, but you need to be the warrior. So you don't have rights. If someone can take it away from you, you never had it. But you can always have duties.
Well, then,
You can always impose on yourself
if I'm a
duty.
toddler and I have a ball, I do have the ball. But if someone takes it away from me, I don't have the ball. It still is true that I had the ball.
You never had the ball. You had the ball because your parents put it in your hand and they let you have it. As soon as they don't want you to have the ball,
Okay.
as soon as the ball is dangerous
Right.
for you, you don't have the ball anymore.
I see what you're saying. So if the power structure can inhibit what
In any
you call
way,
a right,
yeah, then it doesn't exist.
Then it doesn't
so
exist.
The idea that you
let
have
that-
a Second
I'll let that
Amendment
ride.
right doesn't exist. There are red flag laws. There are laws that make you get licenses. There are laws in individual states. That is a conditional right. It's not a right. It is a condition.
Right.
You have duties.
Would
You
you-
have a duty to get your license. You have a duty to train. You have a duty to use and carry this firearm in only the ways that we say that you are allowed to.
right.
That's
true.
what you exist in now. You exist in a fascist state. There are no rights. There are only duties. And let me tell you,
Okay.
you go down the Constitution, you pick off each one of these things. You don't have that. You don't have that either because the government has blocked you from having that, which is exactly what they said they wouldn't, or the government won't protect you from the people who will take it from you.
Right.
So,
Okay.
really, there are no rights. There are only duties.
Okay.
What were we talking about before that?
You make a strong case.
Yeah, yeah.
What we were talking about was the inverted pyramid
Oh, hold on,
and
hold
the
on.
power structure.
I need to talk about Grant
And-
Cardone a little bit.
Wait, hold on.
This motherfucker.
Let me also remind you on one thing.
Circle us back. I need to know what we're talking about.
I'm going to double recircle us back. I'm going to let you talk about Grant Cardone because that's always interesting, and he's an influence of mine. And the original question I propositioned to you was how do we stop in a fascist system a fascist leader who accepts ultimate responsibility?
Mm-hmm.
How do we judge that he will accept ultimate responsibility? Like even if he says he will, when
He
he
loves
gets
his
to the
people.
top, absolute power corrupts absolutely. How do we get him to not break and to lead? Because honestly, dude, I almost sometimes think like the idea of living under a great king. Like, why do you think
Would be
so many
amazing.
people were hyped up about Trump? Because he spoke about America first and American exceptionalism, to use a turn of phrase that's quite popular. And I don't believe that we're like, it's not because we're American we're automatically better than someone else, but it's just the governing principles of this country allow you to be great. That's the idea of American exceptionalism. You're not just born better than someone else because you were born in a nation's borders. It just means that you're exceptional because you've been provided the opportunity in this nation to seek exceptionalism,
Yeah.
where other countries you may be born into a more oppressive system that doesn't allow you to seek that.
You're flipping the script on your individualism and your belief on individualism.
Right. I loved it. That's what I do. I always flip the script
Yeah.
because that's how I explore ideas. Like I have to flip it or I can't. How can I?
Because in that
I have to vet it. I
idea,
have to
the
vet
community
myself.
makes the individual. The community provides the individual the pathway.
Right.
Yeah, and
If people aren't respecting the rights of other individuals, then the individual is going to have like. You can't excel if someone just walks in your front door and guns you down dead and doesn't respect your right to live, right? So
Yeah.
your exceptionalism didn't save you.
And-
Their respect for your being saved you by
Yeah.
them being like, I'm not going to harm you. You're not going to harm me. Great. Let's both go do something awesome.
Oh,
Let's
I,
go excel. So
I
now tell me about Grant Cardone, and then we'll circle back to the
okay.
fascist
Well,
leader.
I've got Grant pulled up here just to come back on him.
What do you have pulled up? I'll show it on the screen.
I just Google Grant Cardone. It's just the right side thing from.
Okay, the
Whatever.
right side thing
Yeah,
for
yeah,
Cardone.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, just because I've seen this guy.
Are you familiar
before
with
around
Cardone?
a bit, but I just have to say, on anybody that speculates property like this in a fascistic system, you're not going to get to do this. That's wrong. The thing that they are doing right now that is happening in our American system of housing is wrong.
Okay.
If you impose upon yourself duties and you improve your community, you get a house, you get a car. You get the monies, the credits to
As
make
in,
that
if I get a
happen.
job and make money, then
You
I
get-
can
You get
buy
to have
those
that.
things.
You can buy
Yes.
those things. You're
Okay.
allowed to purchase them. But if you just speculate and purchase homes and rise their prices, you don't get that. And
You don't get what?
You don't get to keep that. We'll just take all of that from you and tell you you get what you need. You get what your duties that you have imposed upon yourself merit you. Because the idea that Grant just gets to go around and buy a bunch of homes and flip them and make a bunch
Well,
of
he
money.
buys multifamily.
Oh, I don't
He
care.
doesn't buy single family.
I don't care.
Well, we got to get the facts straight.
Well, yeah, I understand. And I'm sure that, Grant Cardone could listen to this and be like, hey, let me tell you all these things. But let me
Grant,
tell
if you're
you,
listening, dude, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate the listen a lot.
yeah, thank you, Grant. Thank you for
Yeah.
listening to this podcast.
Thanks for tuning in, bro.
Yeah, it's real kind of you, even though I'm talking a ton of shit and saying that you should be hanged.
I'm
but-
sure he'll listen, dude. I'm sure he's out there. He'll be one of my 35 views. You know what I mean?
yeah. That's just the thing. That's the thing about.
I don't understand what the thing is. I don't.
That doesn't help the state. That
what-
doesn't
here-
help the community.
I
It
am
tears
now
it down.
triggered. I'm now triggered because
Yeah,
you
you
said
should be.
giving to someone based on their needs.
No, you're not giving anything. People are allotted based on the duties they impose themselves.
Okay.
So if you don't want to impose any duties, that's fine. You just don't get anything. Like the homeless impose no duties upon themselves. So guess what they get? Nothing.
Okay. Cardone has a tagline. He says, "Success is my duty." So he imposed on himself success. Now, what does he consider success? Taking care of his family, basically, and building a legacy. That's what I would, not to speak for him, but having followed him for years, that's what I would sum up. So is he not receiving what he needs based on the duties he's imposed on himself in this system? Because the duties he's imposed on himself in this system is to get filthy rich off of multifamily
Yeah,
real
that's not
estate
a right,
so
though.
that he can. I'm not saying it's a right. It's
Yeah.
a duty, just like you said. Rights.
Oh, it's
don't
not
exist.
a duty to obtain
It's
a
a-
bunch of money.
It's a duty he's imposed on himself, though.
That's
like
not a
what you're
duty.
saying.
A duty would be to serve your community. He's tearing them down.
He's doing it in a way that serves his family and the community, though, because he buys the housing.
Yeah. I
He
understand your idea.
He
on it.
improves the value of the property.
Yeah. And then
Rents it to you, so you get to live in a nice place that's been improved. He doesn't rent to low income. He doesn't abuse low income. He buys like stuff that people who can afford. I would say his type of properties are probably in the like $1,400 a month low end to like $25,000 to $3,000 a month apartments.
Yeah.
He's buying. That's his wheelhouse. So he's not like he's going into low income buying up shit and pushing them out that they can't afford. He buys properties that already cash flow because they're already nice. He just uses it in the way you say speculative. His speculation is that property will rise in value over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. And then he'll cash out on that value, and you made money all along the way, and I'm going to cash out at the end so that I can pay all my investors. So in what way is that not a duty that he's imposed on himself, that he's receiving what he deserves for having imposed that duty on himself? That's what I'm at. That's the idea I'm challenging.
getting rich isn't a duty.
What if you've imposed it on yourself that it is my duty to get rich? Like he
Not a
said,
duty.
success is my
Murder-
duty.
Murdering a lot of people is my duty. That doesn't make it good. It doesn't make it a duty.
No, but if you said it as your duty, even though you would be mentally ill to do so,
Yeah.
but if you said my duty, what I serve in this world is to murder.
So do you follow mentally ill people?
Absolutely not.
Why would you follow this mentally ill person?
Well, I don't see that as mentally ill.
I
to
see him
obtain
as
sus-
ill.
to
I see him as
obtain
ill.
success.
Yeah. Well, obtaining success is not wrong. Making money off business is not wrong. What I see is wrong is that there are people in this country right now who would impose duties, who would do work, who can't afford homes, and their homes empty. And the people that own those homes aren't people, they're they're corporation people.
Absolutely.
And I don't believe in that because corporations aren't people.
Right.
I'll believe a corporation is a people when you can drag one from its home and kill it in its front lawn in front of many
Right.
viewers.
Right.
And until that happens, corporations aren't people.
And right now, currently, with the way the housing market is and with skyrocketing prices, the Wall Street guys are more than ever before buying single family. Like they're getting out of commercial, they're getting out of office building, city type stuff. They're going into the suburbs, and corporations are liquidating and swapping their assets over to, or excuse me, I shouldn't say corporations. I should say these investment groups who typically invest in one certain type of real estate are actually moving into single family and driving the price up. Now that I do think is very dangerous to see corporate buying single family, because the American way of life, has been based on the fact that buy a home. That home serves you and your family. It's your American palace to safeguard and to house your family and protect your family from the elements, and a place for your family to gather and, better know each other and love each other. Like the home is a very important thing in American culture. So I do think it's very dangerous.
I think that the home is important to literally all people in every culture.
I agree, yeah.
There's nowhere you can go where you can't find like a home.
The cave was important to the caveman,
Yeah.
He wouldn't be the caveman without the cave. It's right there in the word. Incredible. So much of that stuff like that is right there in your face. Like, why is it a caveman? It's like that shows the importance of the cave.
Oh. Well, that financial stuff we were talking about is because of money. It's because of the way that money functions in our society.
Right.
Money right now isn't worth anything. They're actually slips of debt paper that we trade around as if they were worth anything. The way the money system works is kind of inverted. It's not a money system, it's a debt system. And all these little pieces of paper pay debts that already exist, and a little piece of paper comes at a debt. Everything is a debt that must be paid, and we're slowly spiraling down this path of debt where we say, does it even matter at a point?
Right.
Well, of course it does when actual economics kick in and the inflation occurs.
Right.
But this is the reason
right
that fascistic states were attacked in the earliest 20th century, because they stopped valuing money off of international banking cartels. They based their money off the work performed by the worker. So your state, when that man gets done and clocks out at the end of the day, the company doesn't give him any money. Well,
what do they give him?
I guess the company does give him the money. They give money based off that work. That money is based off his 8 hours of actual work. So that money isn't generated because there's gold backing it or there's fiat backing it. It's backed by the work of the individual. And I say
by the way,
the company does give it to him. The company is its own entity, and I'll explain a little bit in a fascistic state how that actually operates, because it's slightly different than now.
Okay. By the way, so that brings to mind the idea of when you're saying doing the work, it almost sounds like a proof of work cryptocurrency, where it's like the money is based on the proof of work.
Yes.
You have to do the work, you have to do the algorithm, and out comes
the money.
An Ethereum coin.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically the same concept, and
it's human crypto.
And it's why they don't
minus the ledger. It doesn't have the blockchain ledger though. We're not track. Actually, it kind of does, because you're clocking out. Your hours are on the book, and that is all in a book somewhere. It's all recorded. You did this much work for this many hours.
Yeah, it's blockchain in a factory.
It's interesting. Yeah,
and it's why they don't like cryptocurrencies. It's why governments hate blockchain technology. It's because it is the same thing they fought and destroyed all the fascists in the 20th century over. And it's, now it's all over again. We're hitting the 20s again, and now there's a shitload of communists fucking around everywhere. And that's what happened originally in the teens and 20s.
Right.
Is all of these Marxist communists invaded in places they weren't welcome. And then when they got their shit pushed in, they started crying about it. And a whole international community of people came together who didn't want to do that, who didn't want to fight, who talked years and years about how we weren't going to go over there. So now we have to win over there. But let me tell you, in England, they aren't speaking German. They're
Right.
speaking Arabic. So it doesn't matter. It didn't matter. You fought the fascists and you lost everything.
Right.
You lost your nations, you lost your people, you lost your homeland. So what is there now for you? Democracy? No. Democracy is just a veil for the fascism you don't like, a veil for the fascism of people who hate you.
Oh, so now I see where we're going. So actually, we were going here all along. It's just reoccurring to me what you said at the beginning. You're under fascism either way.
Yeah.
You
but
just want-
you want the fascist you like in power.
Right. So
Yeah.
what about the people who don't like the person that's in power? Do they die? What do we do with them?
What do you mean? Everybody would like
So,
everyone would like the benevolent leader.
Let's live out the alt-right dream as it's prescribed to us, right? Even though I mean, whatever, man.
Yeah.
I'm not like
The
a
alt-right dream.
I'm just literally, just so everyone knows, I'm just using the terms that the mainstream uses for the sake of conversation.
and I am not.
I don't necessarily I don't think I even believe in the idea of like alt-right, the far left, all this crap. I mean, if you want to identify people that way, you can. I get it. It's putting people in groups and putting on labels to help make it easier to understand. So
That's the only way we can
besides the
understand.
point, of course. So let's live out the alt-right dream. Donald Trump becomes the
Oh
fascist.
God, no! That's not the
No,
alt-right.
hold on.
Listen,
Let's
that's
live
not
out the
that's not
alt-right
that's not
dream,
the alt-right
But
dream.
I'm doing the mainstream media version of the alt-right dream for the sake
Oh.
of my example. That's why I'm calling it that. That's
Okay,
why I was
okay.
prefacing what I was saying about using
Yeah.
their terminology. So in the media's idea of what would be the alt-right dream, or even a far leftist might, identify themselves and being like, oh yeah, you just want Donald Trump to be a dictator, because that's what they told us he was. Anyways, right? So let's just say that he is. He's a fascist dictator. We've given him power. What do we do? How do the Donald Trump haters? So there may be a group of people who are like, I love it. Donald Trump's a good guy. He has my interest in mind. He's going to do the right thing for me and my family. Why wouldn't I want to put him in power? I don't want to be in that position of power, but I know someone needs to hold that position. He's our guy. We're proud of him. He's not going to do me wrong. What about the people who are like, I'm not proud of him. I think he's a threat. He is going to do me wrong. And they fear that well, I can't say that their rights will be infringed upon, because you told me rights don't exist, but they
Yeah.
fear that their livelihood and their duties are going to be affected by him being in power. How do you negotiate that in the system that you're talking about? What do we do with those people? They're going to feel completely unserved.
If you feel unserved by your nation, there are so many nations in the world that you can go join. Like, really, if you think that you're oppressed or if your government doesn't do good for you, there are governments who will take you. They will take you in a snap. They will take you in an instant. The problem is that people that live in this country don't realize they live in the richest, most powerful, best country in the world.
I agree with that.
Regardless of fucking anything. So when you tell them,
Yeah.
if you don't like it, go somewhere else, they're like, I'm not going to lower my standard of life.
Right.
Yeah. So it really, on that level, kind of, it doesn't matter if they don't agree. They're going to be such a small minority of the population. They're just going to be the same fucking Marxists that there always have been. Except now the Marxists can burn things. But then, in the the dream state, the Marxists will be running in fear because we
Right.
will be gunning them down,
Yeah,
because
they'd
it
be
will be
stomped out.
illegal to be a Marxist.
I see.
It will be illegal to be a person that has these kind of toxic ideas that don't poison just the individual. They poison the group. They poison the society. Their goal is to tear it down. That's what their revolution is. It is
Gotcha.
not something that builds. It is something that kills. And they
Right.
don't seek to put in that society, that glorious society they speak of, where there is no class and everyone is so super nice to each other. That is never what they do. They always bring themselves to power, put themselves in positions of power, and impose upon others. And they don't impose duties on them. They just say, do it or I kill you. And really, and in an imposition of duties, that's not how it works in fascism. You can still work. You can still do things. You don't even actually have to agree with the fascist leader. As long as you work and you do, and you don't, stockpile weapons or go out and throw Molotov cocktails at the regulators, you're fine. You get to exist.
Who imposes the duties?
You have to impose the duties on yourself, or you don't get to succeed in our society. And then eventually, if you are just a drag on our society, we're going to put you in a camp. like a re-education camp, a work camp, something like. I know people don't like that, but there are no rights. You don't have a right not to go to prison. And right now, there's a bunch of people in prison who shouldn't be in prison. They should be dead or they should be working. Because if you don't trust someone to be in society where you would lock them in a little box for 20 years and then think they're going to come out anything but a fucking animal, you're an idiot.
Right.
You have two sentences for any crime, maybe three. The first is death. We don't trust you in the society anymore. You're dead or exiled, I guess. But no other country in the world is going to take that shit anymore. Like, nobody wants an exile.
Maybe we could build a new Australia where we're like, well, send them there.
Yeah, I mean,
Exile Island. Go take a chance.
There could be. You could set up an exile island, but it would just be like essentially a jungle of killing.
You've been removed from the society at large.
That's worse than being.
That's
hanged.
number one.
Being exiled to a little island of other psychopaths is fucking awful.
Yeah,
like that's worse than hanging a man. If somebody said, okay, well, we're going to exile you to Murder Island, I'd be like, oh yeah, you can hang me. You can just get it over now.
Right. Okay. Or what are the other two sentences?
So the first would be death.
Death.
Work is the second sentence.
Right.
And the third is corporal. Capital, work, corporal. Corporal is being beaten.
And then
publicly.
Then let back into society.
You get to be back into society.
Yeah, it's called taking your licks.
Actually, caning is still legal. I think it's in Singapore. Like someone a few years ago was caned like 15 times for a crime. And people commit those crimes very little because you can be publicly caned for them.
Right.
People don't want to be public. Like that's not only painful, humiliating, you were shamed in front of the entire community. They read out your crime and they say, we're going to cane this person this many times for it. It's basically the government picking your ass up because you've gone way off the rails like a child.
Giving you
they
a nice
pick you up like a child and they spank you. They spank your ass like the child you fucking are. And then they throw you back in society. And if you want to keep doing that, eventually you'll end up dead.
Or in the work camp.
Yeah, or in the work camp.
The other two sentences.
Yeah. I don't believe in the idea of a re-education camp. You can't re-educate people into that. Like when you go, I'm going to re-educate you and inculcate you into my form of belief.
Right.
You never get an earnest believer out of that. You get somebody who can snap, who can turn back on you. You get someone who, because you have altered, because you have messed with them, they even feel more ready to rebel. You know, you read 1984 and you read the ending and you're like, oh no, he will never rebel. Like if he had the opportunity, like if he had, 50 years in his society, he's entirely crushed by dictatorial rule.
Right.
But really any of those people, I wouldn't put them on a committee to talk or anything like that. They don't need to be part of our society so they can poison children or anybody with those ridiculous ideas. And that's the whole thing too. I say that, like I say, oh, these ridiculous ideas, these bad things. And they're all kind of to the individual, what you consider ridiculous, what you consider bad. And it's what the left over time has been working on. They change the meaning of words. They change the discourse. So what once you could say is correct is now the opposite. So they just have imposed their fascism in a different way. Well, actually, in the exact same way a fascist was imposed. It would be forced upon you, not by actual force, but literally doesn't mean literally anymore. It literally means figuratively.
Well, they almost force it on you in the world today through peer pressure and social shame and acceptance. I mean, that's their number one tool is to call you out and get people basically to rag on you, not accept you, and cancel you so that you become irrelevant. Yeah. They silence you essentially.
And that would be the same way that we did it in a fascist society. We would eventually, like, if somebody did not have the right idea, spoke out incorrectly, they would just be destroyed. But you see, we come back again, like, it's just different fascists. We just don't like that kind of thing because it doesn't support our ideals. But if we did have a fascistic society with an actual dictator who loved and cared about the nation and people, we would have that. Hold on, I have to get back to this because it's on my mind.
Sure.
The way that the world would operate in this fascistic worldview, in this idea of a fascist world, is that you are part of a wider international community. Every other state is a fascist state with the same kind of dictator who cares deeply for their people. So every nation is working strongly for their own benefit.
For their people's best interests.
Yes, but you know what's in the people's best interest? Sometimes it's cooperating with the nation to your south or east or west or north. Sometimes it's making a trade deal. So
Sure.
things don't break down because fascism happened. Things get stronger. And not only do laws get more like, sensible, there's less taxation, there's less everything because there's no longer moneyed classes of people who want more money, and that's how they accumulate power. Money has been removed from the power structure. What gives you power is your standing in your community. When you are the physician on the physician's board making physician's laws, that gives you power. And that physician that knows those things deserves that power. But the politician who doesn't know anything about healthcare, who wants to rewrite how insurance companies get to charge me and deal with me, he doesn't know anything about medicine. He doesn't know anything about insurance. What he knows about is how to get money for power.
Okay, so now I feel like now I'm putting it together more clearly that the people in positions of power, you would want them to have some relevance to the position that they wield power in because they're deserving of it because of the work they've done to get there. So let's say, who the head of housing and urban development, you would want to be someone who has an illustrious career in housing and development and building and understands what it takes to build buildings, house people, and things like that.
He can be on
not just an elected official who's like, well, I don't know, I was a.
They're still elected.
Right, but what I'm saying is you wouldn't want some like rando who's never dealt with housing before.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's like, well, here's how I think we should do it, and it's like, well, that's a great idea, but you're an idiot because you've shown no experience in this. And this is maybe it was a bad. I probably could have done a better example with a different category, but that's just the one that came to mind.
Well, hold on real quick because I said something that people will be like, that doesn't make any sense. Where I said that you would get to elect them, like these positions and these, like, I don't know, parliaments, congresses, whatever you would like to call them. They're not unelected. The dictator didn't pick these people. They get to run because they have a license. They get to run because they've practiced as a physician.
Who gives them the license, though?
The state. The state right now decides if you get to be a doctor. The state right now gets to decide if you get to be an arborist.
And that's kind of why it's like
you run under that
already
credential.
in a system like this.
Yes, we already,
as it stands.
This codifies the system and makes it better because now the man that doesn't know anything about trees won't make any laws about trees.
Right.
And that's what this gets rid of, is these people who are not there to make the world better. They are there to make themselves powerful.
Right.
That's what every politician is.
Now, do you agree that regardless of the system, you can't get rid of those people who are there to make themselves powerful? So even the doctor.
Oh, no, you can get rid of them.
Even the doctor.
You can hang every one of them.
And who is the arbiter of the mob?
The dictator.
The mob decides?
Dictator.
What if the dictator has a vendetta against someone and you just...
Well, he probably has a very good reason for that.
And you use your control of other systems where you have influence. It's literally like where we're at now.
At any time the dictator could step in and say, you're doing wrong? No. In any of these little parliaments. Like if the physicians got together...
And what's the check and balance for that?
For the dictator saying no?
Yeah.
The dictator has to be benevolent and loved. Like he has to be the correct person.
This is why the system will never work.
No, it will work. It has worked before. You just have to find that person. And when you don't find him and he does fuck up, everyone gets to kill him. Just like a king.
Which he won't allow, though.
I mean, he will attempt it. But let me tell you, if you are the dictator and the people love you because of what you've done, how you've helped them, and then you turn against them, you lose all your keys to power there. Not slowly over time because people slowly don't agree with you. You don't make them enough money. They take away the key to power.
Sure.
They give it to someone else. The keys to power are the people.
But isn't that exactly what already happens where you rise to power, you're the people's champion, and then the people say, you've betrayed us, but you say, I hold the power. I send my Jinro to gun you down. Like,
the
those who
Jinro
speak out against me. And then you use the media to spin it and say no, and then you start to convert people where they're like, no, great leader, like he's still doing it in the best interest of the people. You make the other The other ones that know better look like wackos and conspiracy theorists. It's like literally what's happening right now already.
But look
So
through
how
history.
here's what I guess I'm saying. You are actually starting to sound more idealistic
Than
than
you?
me,
Yeah.
because this doesn't sound even possible one bit.
It's possible. It's happened so many times. You just need to look at history before the 1900s. Like
Right.
you need to look at history when kings ruled the world, when there were emperors. Those systems of governance were very stable,
Right.
lasted many hundreds of years, more than any kind of like democratic nation I think has lasted. And it's that kind of stability that it offers over time.
Mm.
And I know it sounds idealistic to pick the perfect leader, but those leaders have come about before. Those leaders have led, and I won't say that those leaders didn't do quote unquote evil or bad things, but at no point in history did evil or bad things not happen. Even now, even yesterday, even hundreds of years into the future, you are not going to reach a utopian world.
Right.
But what you can create is a utilitarian world where people aren't money, people aren't businesses, people aren't corporations or the dollars they have or what they spend. People are human beings. And I know that sounds weird when I said you could kill a bunch of them for no reason, but it's not really no reason. If you have a vendetta, if you hate the place that you were a part of, you don't belong there. And if you won't leave, what's everybody going to do with a free radical?
What
like
if you
that?
can't leave? What do we do with you?
You can leave. Anybody can leave.
How can they leave? What if they're like, I have no means of crossing the great sea to get to the place where I feel like I would fit in?
Then we call up that other nation and we go, "Hey, other fascist nation, do you want this
They-
reprobate?"
like,
and
they
they'll go,
really-
"Fuck no."
No,
So
but
then
we're
we
like,
hang them.
But you have to tell them like, but they're not a reprobate. Like they really believe in what you believe over there.
Oh,
but
if
it
that's
doesn't
if
fit
that's
with
the
what
case,
we
they would
believe
freely
over here.
take them. They would
Yeah.
freely take them, just like all the Muslims freely took all of the Muslim refugees. Remember?
Trying to
See,
jog. Hold
even-
on, I'm trying
even
to
when-
jog my memory on that. But you know, I don't. Even that is like I don't even know. I guess I question everything at this point.
You should.
because I'm like Muslims taking in Muslim refugees. Like I don't know that there ever necessarily even was a refugee situation to the scale that it was blown up. I think it was
Reported, yeah.
more just people that were like, hey, you know what? I can just say I'm a refugee and live. Like many have always said, like, well, why didn't you improve the state of your nation through your
Why did immigrants
individualism?
improve your nation but not their own?
Exactly.
That's the,
Yeah,
Give me just a second. I have to piss.
go for it. So I'm looking at utilitarian. Are you a utilitarianismist? Are you a utilitarianist? Utilitarianism is a family of normative ethical theories that prescribes actions that maximize happiness and well-being for all affected individuals. So I would say what my anonymous guest is saying here does fit that definition, that he is looking to maximize the happiness and the well-being of all affected individuals, and the affected individuals would be the individuals living in the nation state. What I'm not understanding and what we have to challenge and think about is, with the corruption that exists in the heart of man, really. And good, you're coming back in the door here. So this is like, here's my question. Like so we started this whole thing off. You said the merits of fascism, which in and of itself is just a great way to absolutely trigger people, and I love it. I love the idea of like,
Oh,
what
yeah.
the merits? There are no merits of fascism. That's not. It's like, well, look, if you can't look at the merits, then you can't look at the downsides either. You can't just
Exactly.
you can't just demonize everything as 100% bad, 100% good, whatever. So I'll go over utilitarianism again for you, and I'll ask. So it prescribes actions that maximize happiness and well-being for all affected individuals. And you're saying that the ultimate utilitarianist would be the leader of the fascist system. He would be the one who's like, which is, I guess, makes sense that people called Donald Trump a fascist, because he kind of expressed that what he was looking out for was the individuals of America. Number one, he was a servant of the people. He said it over and over again. I'm here to govern for the people, which, by the way, no other politician is very willing to say.
Yeah.
They want to say many other things, but he always said, I'm responsible to the people, and it's almost like they demonized him because he was pulling back the veil and
Mm-hmm.
showing that, like, hey, look, it already is this system, but I'm the
Benevolent leader.
benevolent leader of the
Exactly.
system. And well, they were, the demons that control the system were shrieking because they're like, no, you can't reveal that to the people, because then it makes it harder for us to control the people. So,
And in a fascist system, people think, they're going to think that it means, the right wing death
they're gonna,
squads kicking open your door in the middle of the
yes,
night.
oppression is what they're gonna think it means.
That's what everybody think it means. But you don't exist in a world without oppression.
I agree.
You
But
can't.
okay, but hold on. It is not a logical conclusion, though, but because I don't exist in that world already, and this is another version of that world that I
Mhm.
already do exist in, that it is de facto the right way to do it. Does that make sense? So just because I already live in a quote unquote fascist world doesn't mean that I need to do a different version of fascism, unless fascism is the de facto governing reality of our realm that there's nothing we can do to change. So if it's like, here's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If it's like, no matter what you set up, the end relationship due to fact, it's like doing a
Due to
chemical,
structure.
it's like if you drop the ball out of your hand, it will fall to the ground. That's
Yes.
called the law of gravity, right?
Mhm.
That's what we call the law of gravity, whether or not gravity even exists. Um, so so I guess we need to lay out our underlying principles. So if we're saying that fascism is the de facto end result of any governing system of power, then I would agree, yes, we need to choose the best version of fascism then, because no matter what we do, that's where we end up. I
Yes.
think the naysayers would say, no, there's other possibilities.
There are other systems.
There's other systems. Fascism is not what it always trends towards, like a
Mhm.
law of gravity pulling us in. So you start a governing system, it doesn't matter, it's going to pull you to fascism. If that's the case, then yes, we need to choose the most benevolent leader and live under the best possible version of that system that we can.
Yeah.
In a way, does that ring true?
Well,
To me, because there's many things in reality that are exactly that way. It's like, I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. And the
Yeah.
more you go against it, the worse of an experience you're going to have. The more you realize it is that way, then the better an experience you're going to have,
Mhm.
because you know how to live under the rules
Exactly.
of that universe.
And it's
So I feel,
let me give you a corollary. Capitalism. The idea that capitalism is some kind of unique system that we practice is a fallacy. Capitalism is literally just people trading with one another. It's
Right.
and it's the value of items going up or going down. So that's capitalism. Capitalism is the inevitability of any people allowed to trade anything. You will end up in capitalism, because capital isn't money. Capital is the valuable thing to trade.
It's ownership,
Or it's your
as it
skill.
says here.
Oh, is it ownership
It's
specifically?
well, I mean, no, but what enables it is private ownership.
Yes, there is
The
still private
individual
ownership
being
in
able
a
to
fascist
own.
society. There is still private ownership of things, but you only get that through work. You don't get that through speculative finance or anything like that.
Wow, yeah. So a lot of people in America would not like that then, because
Oh no, not at all.
you can not work and keep your house in this country. There are ways.
Well, I understand there are ways, but if you I think there are people still in a fascist society who probably still have a house but don't quote unquote work a lot.
But it can be taken from you.
You still have the capital. You still have the capital to keep up your house. But you're right. It could be taken from you if you are doing something wrong. Like if you were a actual Marxist terrorist going up and blowing shit away, of course your house is going to get taken from you. But just because, you're paying your mortgage and all that, that doesn't mean at all that anyone's going to take your house from you. That's ridiculous. You still get to have a house in a fascist society. Capitalism still exists in a fascist society. The only difference is that the government at any time, the fascist government, can send an expert into your business and find out if you are doing something illegal. There's a company in a fascist society doesn't get to exist if it doesn't benefit the people. So if your company, let's say your company sells heroin, your company sells a drug that addicts and kills people. How about this? Your company sells cigarettes.
What if my company sells guns?
Different. Let's go with cigarettes because this is a thing that actually occurred.
Okay.
Hitler banned cigarettes. Hitler encouraged, people in the Nazi Party not to drink.
Hold
Those
on.
are
And
things.
Let me pause you real quick.
Mhm.
And I don't know a lot about the Weimar Republic, but I don't think anyone else does either. And that's why I
Yeah.
kind of think Hitler gets demonized so hard
They don't know.
because no one's looking at what came before
Yeah.
that motivated that set into motion
Yeah.
those events anyways, go ahead. So people should look that up. Look into the Weimar and how
Look into the Weimar
and how
Republic.
basically fucked the country was becoming.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was
Go ahead.
what was I
Cigarettes.
talking about? Cigarettes.
Selling
Okay.
cigarettes.
So cigarettes kill people.
Absolutely.
Cigarettes are the number one leading cause of death in our country, probably in every country.
This is coming from a medical professional.
Don't tell them that.
You have knowledge of
Please don't tell them that.
You have medicinal expertise.
So please cut that out.
I'm getting him shook up, guys, on the
Don't
podcast. Look at him. He's
shook me.
shook. He's fucking
Don't
shook,
do
dude.
that to me.
I'm rocking his world.
Cigarettes kill people. They
Okay.
kill many, many people through causing heart disease, that kind of thing. So cigarette companies have all their assets seized. Not just the company, the people that run the company.
Okay.
And then all of those people that run the company are put on trial for the deaths of all the people they caught. It doesn't even need to be all of them. It just needs to be this year.
What of the workers,
The workers,
who rolled the cigarettes,
the workers that roll the cigarettes,
who harvested the tobacco, who drove the delivery trucks?
that gets to be a new business.
They're not held accountable?
Oh, no. Those people were just under these others.
Okay.
So just the way that
but see, here's the thing. Where do we draw the line?
we draw the line at the owners.
The marketing guy?
We draw the line at the
copywriters?
people at the top. Just like we
Okay.
draw the line that the dictator is the person at the top most
Okay.
responsible. At the top of the
You have
company,
to take ultimate responsibility.
those are the people with the ultimate
I
responsibility.
see.
Nobody below you gets blamed because of money things.
Gotcha.
You don't get to, as a super rich person, just corporate parachute out of there and just get to laugh your way to the bank.
Sure.
You get to cry your way to the noose.
Okay.
You are put on trial for what you have done, which is killed hundreds of thousands of Americans in a
With your
single
devil
year
product.
with a product that literally has no benefit at all. Literally zero. It only hurts you. It only gives you diseases. It only kills you.
Hold
It
on.
only costs us money. And I don't care that you say that people are free, because people aren't free to do heroin right now.
But let me
People aren't
just
free to
say-
do cocaine right now.
Okay, for the sake of fairness towards cigarettes, okay, for the sake of fairness towards cigarettes, to say that it has no benefit at all, medically,
Zero.
health-wise, I would say it has zero, unless you consider the psychological effects that some people experience from the calming effect of smoking a cigarette. Now, I'm not defending cigarettes at all. I'm just adding to the conversation by
That
saying,
calming effect is you becoming addicted.
right, but
And then you're just addicted, smoking those cigarettes. And you would have been at baseline, but now you smoke to get low. And when you don't smoke,
Sure.
you're high on stress.
trust me, like
So
I'm
it
actually on your
creates a
side.
gradient.
I'm just playing a bit of Diablo's advocate here in the idea that to say that there's no benefit whatsoever, I would tend to agree with, but there are those people who step outside the office, smoke a cigarette, it calms them down. Who knows? A cigarette a day may have stopped them from falling into the psychosis from the pressure of modern society.
Honestly,
So that's all I'm saying. You can
honestly,
always,
in fascist society land where I ban cigarettes and kill
Yeah.
all those people,
right.
you get to smoke weed.
Okay.
Yeah, he can go out and smoke a joint. I don't care.
Okay.
I mean, really, I'd prefer him use a vaporization method that doesn't harm the lungs. Because I just
does vaporizing still cause inflamed airways though?
it can. It just
Okay.
depends on kind of the chemicals they use to create those things. And
Yeah.
remember a few years ago when it's like, oh, beware of vaping marijuana products because a bunch of people got killed. Like, really, that's
Yeah.
just because of a terrible chemical that was being
Yeah, they were
used
essentially putting
in
vitamin
China.
E inside of
Yeah.
oil cartridges.
Yeah.
And then your lungs just shut down when that was inhaled in a vapor form.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know about that.
So let's go back to your example of cigarettes, even though I kind of derailed it with my.
So the cigarette, the corporate
we
leaders.
hold the leaders accountable.
Well, they have all their assets seized first. So,
and who do we give their assets to?
the government gets to keep that. We get to spend that on projects like, infrastructure, all that jazz.
Okay.
There's no more lining of pockets for things like that. There are no more districts,
Is there
stuff like that,
is there
where money is allotted.
here's another thing I think that this type of system would require: absolute translucent, beautiful, crystal clear oceans of South Florida levels of, clearness of transparency in all things.
Yes.
Like you would not be able to move a dime to anything without it being seen,
Mhm.
And I don't even know if South Florida beaches are crystal clear. I just couldn't think of
They are.
anywhere that there's crystal clear water. Though I will say a lot of the natural springs in Florida have some of the most clear water I've ever seen in the world.
Oh.
So let's just say I need that level of clarity when I look. I, as an individual, should have the accountability where I can go on the fascistic government's website and see where they've moved and it should be verifiable like a blockchain technology
Every
where the
single dollar.
ledger's verifiable all the way back so that there's no way that they can do false documentation, because all that would happen is if you could do false documentation is we'd be exactly right back where we're at now, where we think we have transparency, we think we have accountability, but in reality, they're just showing me that I do, but I don't actually have that. They're just creating a world in front of me where I'm like, oh, I can see the books, I see everything, and they're like, dude, we doctored those books and we control the flow of information. So you're only seeing what we want you to see so that you believe there's transparency.
Yeah. History has been rewritten thousands of times over. History is an agreed upon set of lies.
Oh man, it's almost the weight of the world. It's just too heavy for me, dude.
I mean, it is a
you
lot
know
of
what I
bullshit.
mean? It's just, oh, it's heavy. This is why I always default back to the individual, where I'm like, at least
You think the individual
you
could solve
yourself
this.
can No, I don't think they can solve it, but I think they can solve it for themselves. You can come to terms with what is and still seek out the best possible resolution for yourself.
The fascist still does that.
I don't deny that.
Yeah, I think the fascist still does that. There are, in the tenets of fascism, there is duty. Gosh, I forget. It's like damn, people are really going to get me on this one.
5 of the 35 people are really going to get you.
Yeah.
I mean, so so you're making a big case here for the merits of fascism. You think it's do you think it is, like the example I gave earlier, you think it's the natural way of the world?
Yes. The idea of fascism,
Good or bad, that's
as
where
Hitler
we're headed.
explains it, it is basically the laws of nature that,
I see.
the strong always overcome the weak. And, to be strong, you have to impose on yourself duties. And that's kind of a thing that people don't realize often about Hitler. The person that he was very strange. He imposed a lot of things on himself that he just wouldn't do. And he was very stringent in certain things that he believed. And the other party members at times would be like, why are you thinking that way? They would write things where they're kind of like questioning, like, why does he do this way? But he's still, the benevolent leader. He still does the things. And
You just triggered so many people when you called him a benevolent leader.
Yes.
Because they're going to say, how is he benevolent when he put
he loves his people.
Jews in concentration camps?
Oh, you mean Hitler?
Yeah.
Oh, because the Jews invaded his nation in the 19s and the 20s and took it over and turned it into the Weimar Republic. Turned it into basically like the child rape capital of the world.
Right. That's essentially why I said people need to go look into the history of the obscured history of the Weimar.
I mean, it's been rewritten, and it's only going to say that, this was a great time when homosexuals and transsexuals, they got to live in freedom and do whatever they want. Literally, it was them raping the shit out of children fucking constantly. It was
degradation.
It was the degradation of a society and a culture.
Sure.
And it had gotten so bad that Hitler, living in the slums, when he went and confronted the Jews that had invaded his nation, living in that fashion, there's the quote, I slowly came to hate them. Not that I'm saying that anytime you encounter a Jewish person, it's time to, get the knives out. Because there are, like I said, one of the major factions of Jews in the world who are vying for power. They are the ethno-nationalists. They are the people that believe in the Jewish people and their superiority,
Sure.
which to an extent is kind of right. They're a very powerful people.
Right. And that, I mean, it's actually very annoying when people refuse to see that side of the coin too. I mean,
Oh yeah.
there are the victims of there is the victim class. If you want to look at what am I trying to say here? There's two sides of every coin.
Yeah.
And you can pick any race you want, any race of people, even though, the Jewish race is a very interesting thing because it's like a religion and a race. It's weird. It's just become an identifying thing. You can say you're a Jew, but say, oh, I'm non-religious, whatever. So let's just stick with white people since I'm white. Maybe I'm allowed to speak for white people. But, if you ever looked at a whitey, you see we have every spectrum of type of person you could possibly have. We have the piece of shit, piece of trash, like person who is in that situation because their life led them there, and there's other people in that situation because they made the choices that led them there.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have people all the way to the top who are like good people running companies who are just trying to do the best for their family. And we have good people who happen to be white, who are complete pieces of shit, who rose to power, who are corrupt and greedy and everything else and aren't principled. So you have I think you have the full spectrum with every race of those people, right? So that's why I wouldn't look at someone who identifies as Jewish and take a one singular look at them, right?
Just like with my community, with black people, we have all of those types as well.
Right.
And you're going to come to a point where you find a black person who's not doing quote unquote good.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that like all black people are bad. Just like not all Jewish people are bad just because one international Jew ruined something for everybody else. So that's kind of like the funny part about it is like on one hand, everybody immediately is going to associate fascism with racism, but that's just because how it is
Hitler.
taught, and Hitler in general.
Yeah.
When really there's so many
boy.
fascistic leaders that are I would say, I don't know, Hitler to me is the number one in kind of that idea of benevolent leader. He cared so deeply about his people. He gave everything, even his life.
He didn't escape to Argentina?
I don't, I know they checked that skull, and it genetically is not, it's a woman's skull, it's not Hitler. If he did escape to Argentina, like, I don't know, man. Like,
was Hitler evil?
I mean, if Obama isn't evil, if Bush isn't evil, if Biden isn't evil, Hitler isn't evil.
Okay, so he was evil then, because I think those people are evil.
Well, I mean, in the idea of a fascist society, like, everyone is going to crack eggs. Everyone cracks eggs.
Yes.
Everybody is making cakes. Everyone is cracking eggs.
It's kind of like the idea of war. Like, are you familiar with Jocko Willink at all?
I don't think so.
Jocko Willink is a former Navy SEAL. He has a podcast. He's written several books. He talks a lot about leadership. And I love what he says about war because he doesn't sugarcoat it. And he's like, basically one of the principles of going to war and being a part of a war, he says, he's like, and he makes no excuses for it. He's like, you have to have the will to kill, like to be an effective warring soldier. Whether you think like there's going to be killing and you have to have the will to kill. If you don't have that will, you will not be effective. And obviously there's, he makes all the nuances and whatever, but if you just stopped it right there, you're like, wow, that's a really powerful statement. The nuances that hopefully those who you're killing are, your enemy and for your overall goal. But that's what he's pointing out is that's the nature of war. Like if you don't have the will to kill, you will not win the war. I mean, that's what war is: fighting, killing, and winning and conquering, So, I feel like that statement in and of itself is like, what you're saying, our soldiers are killers or whatever. And he's just boiling it down to the truth. He's like, you have to, if you want to aim down the sights of a weapon and take someone's life, to be able to do that effectively, you must have the will to do so.
Yeah. Violence is the ultimate authority from which all of their authority is derived.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There is no more depth to go below violence
at its
as far
core,
as imposing authority.
At its core, that is the first tenet
Right.
of fascism.
Obviously, we built societies to curb that, where we're like, hey, we don't have to rely on violence. We can solve it in other ways.
Oh no,
But
it's
at the
still solving
core,
violence.
well, it
Violence
is.
just by people that you empower.
But now we have the courts who can give you a slap on the wrist instead of using violence, where in the past we
Well,
may have used violence to
There's still violence.
implement that.
The
Of course
police
there
get
is.
you to the court with violence. The idea, if you don't show up, there will be violence.
Mm-hmm.
See, that is the authority that they wield, is violence. Our state has what is called a monopoly on violence.
Right.
You as an individual
commit
in this country
violence.
cannot do any
Absolutely
form of
not.
violence. Any form of anything that could be called violent that you could do, they'll arrest you.
Right.
So, I mean, it would be just the exact same
Yeah.
way. It's
Well,
arose by any other name.
That's people's problem with the police shooting people in these altercations, where they feel like maybe someone shouldn't have been shot.
Yeah.
It's like the police have a monopoly on violence. If I shoot a police, it's hell to pay.
Yeah.
Murder in the first degree, death penalty, whatever, they'll throw the book at me. If a police shoots someone, it's kind of like, well, someone has to have the monopoly on violence, and it's us, and we kind of think that was they call what's called a justified shooting.
I don't believe in the police.
I mean,
I don't think we need a society that
too
has
simple of a
police.
statement to say I don't believe in the police.
Well, it's just like I don't believe in the idea of the police as like an agent who comes and like is like the executor of like these things these other people want. I want regulators. I want people who have the power, who have the judgment, like who can come into your home and be judge, jury, and executioner if you were fucked up.
Sorry, I'm just thinking of the Snoop Dogg song where they're like, regulators, mount up.
It's kind of like, do you ever watch Judge Dredd or read that comic book?
I definitely haven't read the comic. I've seen Judge Dredd. It's been years.
Well, you got to read the comic to get a better idea of
Is
what
Judge
this
Dredd,
is.
are they fascist?
Yes, that's a fascist
Interesting.
society that exists in like a far future.
So it's almost like they're showing us that, hey, whatever form of government you choose, you've ultimately chosen fascism.
Well, this will be funny too to you. In the Judge Dredd comics, there's like a big group of people who are fat activists who are like, free the fatties. Like the fatties have fat rights.
We actually have those now today.
Yeah, we have those now today, which is funny. But in the comic, they're much more, funny. But I'm sure give us 200 more years, and our fat activists will be like that. Yeah, they'll look just like those people.
One can only hope.
And the judge obviously, judges these people when they're like rioting, committing acts of violence. Yeah.
Judge Dredd's thing
on
is
the
like
spot.
they come in on the spot.
That's what I want. When I say I want a regulator, I don't want a police officer. I don't want some dumbass who went to some training camp for 6 months. I want a guy who went to 4 to 6 years of college, who knows all these laws, is imbued with power, and imposed duties upon. You don't get to be a judge and go and make these judgments and then come back scot-free. The other judges judge you.
Okay. Here's a question. How do I motivate that guy to do 4 to 6 years and learn these laws and become a judge?
He wants to be powerful. He wants to be respected in his community. He wants to be part of the nation, and he wants to be important in it and do better for it. And if he doesn't want those things, I don't want him doing anything anyway.
Then why can't we have a good police force under what we have right now?
Because the people that you make police are retarded high school dropouts with an inferiority complex.
Okay.
I'm not saying that every single cop is that, but the majority of the police force in this country are people who are not smart.
And why is that though?
It is because the system does not require them to be smart to become police officers. The reason you don't have these kind of like police shooting incidents in a lot of European countries isn't because they don't have guns. It's because their police go to college, basically. They don't go to academy, they go to college, and they really do spend quite a great deal of time. And I think that if you do that, you don't get to be a police officer, you get to be a judge. You get to be someone who makes decisions in the field, not someone who is like a servant.
Well, that certainly would alleviate another part of the system. I mean, that comes with its good and bad qualities.
Yeah,
because it would alleviate a part of the system where we have this backup in the courts, and criminals are getting away scot-free for years and years before they ever see their day in court.
That's a different problem.
Well, I think but what you're talking about lends itself to that problem, or or solves that problem in a way, because if we did have judges and it was decided right then and there, that's one less in the queue who needs to go through the court system.
Mm-hmm.
Your a judgment's already been levied on your crime,
And the
and I levied
judges
it on the
too.
spot.
The judges in Judge Dredd too. They don't just kill people. Like
What about all
they do different kinds of sentencing
Sure.
for people immediately. But like that's one of the things they do in the riots is they immediately sentence someone to death and shoot them.
So what about all the stupid videos I see of European police being used to like under COVID, like, oh, you don't have a mask on in this park, and they like, pin someone to the ground and haul them off. I mean, here's someone, you're saying they went to college and whatever, but look at them. They're just a mouthpiece of the state, you know?
I think you're talking about police in the UK. Is it like that in the UK? I'm more like Swedish police.
I mean, I feel
German
like
police.
I feel like the video was of the UK.
Yeah,
But
they're
I mean,
speaking
you may have
English.
seen it other places too. So
Yeah.
again, like,
Well, those people live under fascism, and
How do we
I would have
stop-
to say,
how do you stop the abuse of power though in all these things? Like, I guess I already know, honestly, is that you don't.
extreme violence.
There's no stopping the
No,
abuse
you
of
extreme
power.
violence. That's what you do. You use extreme violence, and that's what a fascist will understand is that violence is the ultimate authority by which all authority is derived. So if
I see.
my violence is so unpopular that it can't overcome your violence, guess who gets to be the new dictator? It's the one who gathers the keys to power, not because the keys to power are money. It's because the key to power are loyalty. They are being a good person. They are valuing your nation and your people. Those would be the new keys to power, not money, not finance, because you can't have money or finance because the government limits it. The government says you can't have too much. There's
You know
a
what?
ceiling.
Now you got me thinking. I'm going to kind of switch gears here a little bit, because now you got me thinking, like, whether this was true or not, okay? Because now I feel like I have to preface everything I say with
Whether
like,
it was true or not.
yeah, I have to preface everything like that I say historically is like, you know what? I don't even know how much of history was true, is true, regardless. This is kind of a lot why, if the story I've been told is correct, our founding fathers came here and laid out what we call Christian principles, Christian governing principles. And like the idea of the 10 Commandments, the idea in Christianity is like so strong, we see it all over the West. Like,
Yes.
Ideas that were laid out first, treat your neighbor. Actually, Jesus said the greatest commandment was to love God first and then to love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the ultimate idea of unity.
Mm-hmm.
However you want to view God, if we're all loving the same eternal force that binds us all, and then we're all recognizing that eternal force in each other, then we're loving God and we're loving others as ourselves. And now we have a governing principle that says, hey, whatever we do, whatever further laws we create, we don't violate this topmost important part of the structure, this most important rule that we've laid out. So it's
and
like,
that's the 10 Commandments you're referring to? That's the
I'm
most
referring to
important
Jesus
rule.
said the greatest commandment
Okay.
is, basically the Pharisees tried to corner Jesus and say, hey, you've said all these things. You've taught us all these things. You have all these teachings, and I don't know that they necessarily referenced the 10 Commandments because that was Old Testament. That was the time of Moses.
Mm-hmm.
Would have been historically hundreds of years before Jesus. But they came to him and basically tried to trick him and say, hey, man, it's actually kind of one of my favorite stories from the Bible, where they're like, hey, man, we're going to get you tied up because you've taught all these things. You've said all these things. How about this? What's the greatest of all your principles? Expecting him to be like, oh, shit, well, there is no one greatest. I mean, you have to do them all equally. And he shut that shit right down and was like, no, there actually is a greatest principle. And I'll lay it out for you right here. Okay, so I feel like our founding fathers came with that influence of Western Christianity and Protestantism, or whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
that developed over thousands of years, basically since the time of Jesus, came with that idea and said, we're going to put this unifying idea will be, this is our core principle, and we're going to live by this principle that you violate no other man's rights, and in that way you're treating your neighbor as yourself, as you would expect to be treated. You treat them. So is violence the ultimate authority, or is God the ultimate authority in that? Like, because violence almost sounds like but God is both of those things, because you saw God's wrath
Yeah.
on his people when they
Yeah, I was about to
disobeyed
say,
him, And then you saw
God is
God
violent.
bless the people who did obey him. So it's
Mhm.
like it's almost like you can choose one of the two things. It's like you can
Well,
choose you can choose, and man, it's just, God, there's so many, like this. I believe we live in a universe of parallels, that every one thing can, that's why we're humans so strongly identify with metaphors and analogies, because we naturally understand parallels. And so it's almost like if you were a parent and your child was acting out, you could say, look, you can act right and you're going to receive blessings. You want this new video game, you want to have a friend over, whatever. How about this? Show me with your actions that you're good.
yeah,
And
take on the duties.
yes, take on the duties of goodness and respectfulness, and show me that you care about, that you're not trying to violate my principles as a parent, and that you're trying to improve.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you the quote unquote blessings, which is basically giving you
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
want. You're going to earn it. Or don't adhere to my principles, and I'm going to pull down those pants and whip that ass.
Yeah.
Like, at least here in the South, that's kind of how it was instituted in a lot of families, where it's like, you want me to tan your hide,
Yeah.
and I'm going to use violence as my ultimate authority. And God did the same thing. I mean, what did God do when he realized that his creation had run amok? He was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I guess I have to flood the, and actually that's what the Bible is. Like, the Old Testament is the violent God who had to show you through punishment, basically, to get his people in check. He's like, you're fucking up, and I'm going to kill most of you and save a few, and those few are going to have a nice
Yeah.
little, they're going to start over, and they're going to do properly by the principles, and I'm going to bless them if they do. Then in the New Testament, Jesus came as, quote unquote, his son, to, it's funny, and immediately in my head I'm like, why do I say quote unquote? And it's like, I don't know why I say quote unquote. Okay, but Jesus comes as God's son to show a new way where it's like, you can be redeemed,
Because Jesus is God. That's
you
what
can
he
be
says, quote,
saved
unquote.
by the grace of God and not through acts. So I'm not going to punish you for your acts. I'm going to save you by grace, and that grace is gifted to you by a benevolent creator who cares about you, right? So you got both sides of the dichotomy. You got the violent, vengeful God who's like, you did me wrong, now you die. And then you got the redeeming God who said, you've done wrong, but I recognize your flaws in the realm that I've put you in, and I give you the chance to redeem yourself by, that's why they say you're saved by faith, not by works. And yet it's also like, your works show the level of your faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
Personally, I don't like that. You're not saved by work faith alone. You are saved by work and faith.
I agree that you can't if you actually have actual faith, your works will show it. And I think that's what that statement was saying. You cannot profess to believe and then not show it in your actions. It's the same way anyone, again, to draw a parallel, it's the same reason why anyone would get upset when they're like, hey, you said you were going to do something and you didn't do it. Now I'm pissed off. Like, your word means nothing. And you're like, oh, well, I didn't. They're like, no, it doesn't matter. Your actions showed me more than your words indicated to me, right? So it's your actions that are important. And that's why I think even the statement, like, you're saved by faith, not through works. Your faith is still shown by your works. That's sort of the nuance of it. At least that's what I think.
And in that token, it's kind of funny. God is the ultimate fascist. He is the benevolent dictator of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
He gave us this place, and he also does the same thing that I say a benevolent dictator would do.
He does hold the ultimate authority.
He holds the ultimate authority. Violence, he uses it. And when Jesus comes, he says, I can save you. We can work on this together, because that's what the fascist will say. The fascist will say, we can work on this and we can fix this. We can make this correct. We can make it right. And God does too. God does that with Jesus. We can make this right. We can make a new covenant. We can make a new deal, and we can all live in this society correctly. And
he didn't have to punish in the way that he used to. He didn't have to use violence as the ultimate authority.
No.
He kind of used like diplomacy through Jesus.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing, is that you establish your fascist state with violence, and you maintain it with diplomacy.
Interesting.
And that's where Hitler failed. He established his territory with violence.
But he was terrible at diplomacy?
No,
No?
he just kept going with the violence. If
see.
he had stopped at some point and not had fought a war on three fronts, he would have won, or at least his fascist state would have existed for long enough
Right.
to help Oswald Mosley set up the fascist state in the UK, which probably would have happened. And really, Rockwell was kind of a cunt, and I don't think very smart, and Hitler didn't
Who's
like him.
Rockwell? One of his advisors or something?
George Lincoln Rockwell.
I'm not familiar.
Oh, you should Google it.
I'm not like much into World War II history, honestly. Like I haven't.
That's not World War II. That's
Well,
American history.
Okay,
Just put it in.
I mean,
George,
Rockwell's. I'm obviously
George Lincoln.
Georgie. I put in Georgie.
Don't do that.
They probably called him that.
There you go. First one.
Oh,
So,
dude, what's he got? A cigar?
This
Oh,
guy is the guy who he's like the American Nazi guy. He was part of the Nazi Bund, or is that what it is?
Wait, he was a father of American Nazis?
Yeah,
I never heard of this guy.
You see that blows my mind. Like he's kind of like white Malcolm
Excuse me for
X.
not being a Nazi.
You know, it's funny that people like to call people Nazis, but like nobody's a Nazi anymore.
You know what's
Nazis
really
are
funny
gone.
is that the more I think about like what we've been talking about this whole time, it's like it seems taboo in a way,
Incredibly.
but it's like you and I we haven't violated anything in this discussion.
We have.
No, we haven't, but we're literally having a discussion personally,
Mhm.
just you and I, and we're not advocating, we're not using influence, we're not saying that there's something should be legislated. Like we're not trying to take anything from anyone else. We're just trying to take ideas and discuss them, you know? And when you start to, you know, that's the problem with what we see happening in America right now. Like when you start to inhibit the discussion of ideas, you're going down a very, very dark road.
Well, you show your weakness.
In what way?
When you inhibit somebody from sharing an idea, you show your weakness. That idea is stronger than yours, so you have to censor it.
Ooh, Malcolm X. It's like banning Alex Jones.
Yeah. Alex Jones is so powerful that you need to take that away from him.
Right, that you have to ban him. All it does
Yeah.
is like lend itself to his credibility.
And
Like,
it does, you know.
Which is crazy. It's like, so why don't they do something else besides ban him, though? Because if we sit here and we know those principles, then the powers that be certainly understand the principle that, like, wow, you know, if we ban him, if you strike me down, I'll only become more powerful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a classic. It's almost like an archetype in a way. You know, when you strike down the voice that speaks the truth only lends more credibility to how true that actually was. It was so true that you had to silence it.
Yeah.
So why would they then silence him when they have to know that those principles exist? Because they think it's still. Do you think it's still? They're like, yes, but the benefits for us of silencing him outweighs the amount that it bolsters the truthfulness of his claims.
Possibly. Like that's a thing that each, like, I guess, fascist government would decide for itself, is getting rid of this person, is doing this thing, pulling our veil back too much. And right now you exist in a fascist society who are entirely unaccountable and hate you, you know?
I would
Like
agree
they
with that.
literally hate you.
Absolutely.
They hate everybody who exists below them in the scale of power, because as part of the corporate core, they can at any time move from government position to high-paid corporate position, and then move back from high-paid corporate position back into governance.
Right.
And not only can they do that, that's where they take their deals. Like the company I just came from, you know, gets a sweetheart deal now that I'm a senator. That happens all the time.
Right.
And that's just kind of the fascism that you live in, is the fascism of like
Corporate political
internationalism.
incest.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
I mean, that's what I mean when I say corporate core, is that these people, like, you know, a senator is married to a woman who is the president of company, and then government does contract. Well, woman's company that is
whose
wife.
company should we choose?
Exactly. They're always lining their pockets, and just because of the way that our system is set up now, it allows that. It allows for it. It excuses it. And
of course it allows it. They created
that system
to allow that. Yeah.
And I guess when I say currently we exist in a fascist system, it's just a fascist system we don't like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we could have a fascist system that we loved. Because right now, you don't have a democracy. Your election can be taken from you.
That's quite clear.
Remember, everybody in 2016 was like, oh, how did Trump steal that election? from
Trump
Hillary.
stole the
Yeah,
election.
we got to set up a special counsel. We got to go after him. We got to make all these things. And then now it's silence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we're like, wait a second, Biden stole it. They're like, what? You can't
So-
steal elections. What
so-
are you talking about?
Exactly. So now
We have the most, we have the utmost of integrity when it comes. And yet it's like, why is there no voter ID again? Because that's racist. Again, let's use this.
Yeah.
Let's use these terms.
I love that, by the way.
Well, let's use these terms like racism to just blanket demonize things.
Well, the idea that voter ID is racist is in of itself a racist idea. Non-whites are too foolish, too poor, too
Right.
inferior
Right.
to obtain and use
Well, you've
an
s-
ID.
Let's see. I'm going to Google this, and people are going to be like, that's racist. But asking black people if they have ID. There's a
The
good
YouTube video,
on
yeah, I've
this,
watched
yeah.
that.
All right.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I want to bring it up. Our voter ID law is racist.
Yeah,
This
I've seen
isn't- this isn't
Ami
the,
Horowitz video.
Ami
it up.
Horowitz. This isn't the video, but there's
This
another
is
video.
the video
Well,
where he
there's-
asks the kids.
Oh, you're right. It might
and
be.
then he goes and he talks to the
and then he
the
goes
peop-
and
the
talks.
black
Does he
people.
talk to
Yep.
black people?
This is
And
it. This
he's
is
like,
the
"Do you
one."
know where the DMV is? Do you
And
know how
he's
to
like,
get an ID?"
yeah, it's on
And they're
blah,
like,
blah,
"Are
blah
you
street."
fucking stupid, bro? Of course, the VMD's 2 blocks that
Yeah,
way."
and not a single black person there doesn't have an ID.
Exactly. So
It's really just like what Democrats have been running on for many, many years
Right.
is that we're going to fix racism. And it's been 50 plus years and they didn't fix it.
it's been
They're still running on it.
and it's been tens of thousands of years, whatever you want to call the life age of humanity, that the idea of liking groups that are like you has existed, and it still hasn't changed even to this day. Because, and based on that scientific experiment, it's like we can identify the fact that, people must tend to want to be in tribes, and the tribes they form must be with the people who share similar characteristics to them, because that makes them feel safe and
Yeah.
and even beyond safety, almost like accepted,
Valued.
normative, valued, where they're like, okay, these are my people, this is what we do. And then see, the unifying factor is to look across the river and be like, oh, and there's their people, and
that's
there's
what
what
they
they
do.
do.
Exactly.
And then to say, excuse me, fine, darker skinned gentleman than me over there, I noticed you had some beautiful yellow corn that you were feasting on, and we happen to grow lots of berries over here, but we have no corn. Perhaps we bring
share.
you some of our
Yeah.
berries, and
And
you
see-
trade us some of your corn. And by the way, I have no beef with you based on the way that you look and what, when you go home, if you want to do some cultural significant ritual, I don't need to know anything about it. I just would like your corn, sir, and I offer you these berries as a trade. And they say, perfect. Here's our corn. We'd love to have some
Yeah,
berries.
and
we
what
don't
you're
give a shit what
describing-
you go home and do culturally, significantly, and ritualistically for your culture, good sir, as long as you bring us more berries next week, because we love your berries.
And what you're describing there is the community of fascist nations. That's what the fascists then imagined, is
Right.
that every nation would be a fascist one. And all of the base product of the nation is for the people. But what is good is trading. What is also good is bringing people in from other nations who want to be a part of yours, and letting people from your nation join other nations who they think they would be a better part of.
Right.
So in fascism, there is not a lack of, I would say, multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is preserved in fascism because
Right.
every nation is its specific own cultural people, and every nation is looking to maintain that rather than get rid of it. Because in global homogenization, every culture has to be destroyed, and it has to be reformed into the same aspects that everyone can do. The lowest common denominator must be the cultural norm.
Right.
For everywhere. And it can't be you get your specific thing and they have their specific thing. It is all one thing. And that is how the internationalists want the world. They want it all homogenized. And then they at the top will rule.
I 100% agree with you. I think that is the system of reality that exists.
Yeah.
I absolutely do. I don't know how anyone can deny that those with power seek more power. They seek control, and the easiest way to control is I level the playing field. You're all equals. You're all one class. You're the lower class. We're the upper class, and we're the elites. And
That income inequality thing that people are so upset about it literally is them. It's the people that are saying, being champions, oh, we've got to get rid of income inequality. Those are the people that create it the most.
So now I want to give you the opportunity to sink your own ship and tell me why fascism is not a good form of government, like is not a good way to govern your people. Like, what are the downsides of forming a fascistic form of government?
It tramples the rights of people and it kills them.
I thought we have no rights.
You don't.
I only have duties.
Yeah, that's in the fascist society. But
So how does it trample my
you live in a
rights?
society where you believe you have rights. So when
see.
I impose, I have to destroy your rights
I
first.
see.
So and that's where like the first step where we're going to have conflict.
Because people are going to be like,
Well, because then I'm going to have to kill a bunch of people or get rid of a bunch of people, or there's something that's going to have like a slide. See, now there's a sleight of hand. There is a trick performed in front of you where you think you have those rights, but you
Yes.
don't, because all of these laws and regulations have been put on it and taken away.
called
from you.
wizardry.
Yeah. So that wizardry has taken away all of those things from you already. So you think you have them. You think you have those rights.
Right.
But I come at you and honestly say, you don't have rights. The system you live in
You
now,
never had them.
you didn't have them before. You
Right.
won't have them now.
I see.
That is the first kind of downfall of wanting to have a fascist government, because you're going to have to set boundaries. You're going to have to set rules, and it is going to hurt people. It is going to hurt people no matter what you do. But I have to say now, whatever the system did, it's hurting people. People are always going to be hurt. So if you can hurt people like a lot once and not have to hurt them ever again,
Right.
that is preferable. But then again, I can't guarantee that. No one could guarantee that in any society, that after I do the bad thing, I don't have to do the bad thing again. Because really throughout history, it plays, I do the bad thing. Fuck. I do the bad thing. Shit.
So
Bad thing.
how is, again, so everything we're talking about is like in an ideal way where it's like, well, ideally we'd select
Ideally.
a benevolent leader and whatever.
Well,
and
really,
we would rip the Band-Aid off
the
one
system of
time.
fascism can only exist with that benevolent leader. Because if it doesn't exist with that benevolent leader, it becomes a kind of amorphous dictatorial fascism that is more like communism, where it is not an individual that has responsibility that rules over you, but rather a party, a cabal of people.
Right.
And once you have that cabal, those people are shadowy, entirely unaccountable. They can
Yeah.
have a front head.
It's like the bureaucracy that exists in America today. They're
Well,
they're
it's
the
like
shadow
China.
cabal.
It's like China. Like there's a very visible cabal of the party, and there's the front head of the party.
Right.
But he doesn't truly rule as like the fascist dictator down his imposition to others.
Right.
His party rules. And if his party got rid of him, or if they wanted to get rid of him, they could. So it's not Hitler ruling, because Hitler would have to have stepped down or handed over the reins to someone else to continue that form of fascistic government, which then only kind of almost becomes monarchical, because you would imagine a man to hand it down to his son, but a truly benevolent leader wouldn't do that, because he would recognize that his son has grown up in a position that does not.
And he would give it to the most qualified man.
He would give it to the most qualified man. And
Again,
then
idealistic though.
that is another downfall of fascism, because people don't like the kingmaker. People will want the son. People will say, "You were so great. Why can't the son be great?"
Right.
And when you say, "Well, this guy over here that doesn't look anything like me, that you've never heard of, he is actually the one. I've been with him." And you would hope that enough people would say, "Oh gosh, yeah, you're right. You're totally right, benevolent leader. This is the next man." But there would be a faction. There would always be a faction in the split. And that's where fascism falls apart. It falls apart when you transition from one dictator to the next.
It's almost like a cult of personality in a way.
Well,
where
that's
they're
what
like-
that song is about.
Right.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
the song lists like the different cults of personality. Gandhi is a cult of personality, even
Yeah.
though he's very nice. It is a cult of personality that people gather around him and decide that he is right and correct.
It starts to become more about the man than it does the principles.
And that's the thing. It
what a
is
cult of
more
personality
about
is,
the man.
generally.
And
Yeah.
that's what any fascist society would be about. It would be about kind of the man and what what duties he would impose on himself and what his expectation of the people is and what he can accomplish. Because if that dictator can't accomplish anything,
Uh-huh.
people will remove him. The
Mm.
keys to power that be that you want to minimize and
You keep
change,
saying people
get
will
rid of him.
remove him, but what about when he, through the use of force, is like, I will not be removed, and people, for fear of their own lives, kowtow like we do today and say, okay, well, I'm not gonna attack with the mob because I know the first two rows of attackers are getting gunned down as we storm the palace to remove our fascist dictator.
Yeah.
You know, is that not also a downfall of fascism, to where if they, even if they start benevolent but then become corrupted, and you say, oh, well, the people
Yeah.
will just remove them? It's like, well, who will remove them? Like a lone sniper, you know? But what if government loyalists just are, they become the kingmakers, and
Yeah.
they don't let the people put the new person in, you know? But I guess what we're
That is
talking,
another struggle of kind of the transit, because
but that's
in
a struggle.
fascism, the
So,
transition of power is kind of the breaking point.
how then is, as a representative republic democracy, not the best system then? If we're assuming the ideals, how is it not best for everyone to vote? Their vote all counts equally. Like, whoever is chosen is the representative of the people, and if
Mhm.
that person's a benevolent representative, they represent the actual interest of the people. Which, of course, this is not the case in most of America
I was about to
today.
say, I mean, you're describing a very beautiful system that
Right.
doesn't exist.
But you're describing a beautiful system, because I would love to. Me personally, because of my internal draw towards masculinity and power and authority. When someone is like a benevolent authority, I feel very respectful of it, and I feel drawn to it in a way where I'm like, you're a good leader, you're a good man, you have qualities in you that I want in me. And since I see you making good, benevolent decisions, not only am I inspired, but I respect you, and I want to do what you say. It's like having a good boss at work. You're like, my boss treats me so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would I ever betray him? I want to work hard for the company because the company rewards me. But honestly, again, that's why, like, capitalism and representative republics also work really well, because if you're choosing the right people with the right convictions, and they go to the next level and represent your actual interest. If I, here in my neighborhood, elected one representative from the neighborhood and sent them to the county board to speak for the neighborhood, and 75% of us voted, and that was a good person, I would think, I know they're going to go there and represent my best interest, and I got a say in that. I got to go vote and have a say in who does that. So, like, that's also a great system if we're assuming the ideal.
Yeah.
So, and then, if we put it on a scale, are you saying that for you, a fascist system outweighs the scale of the elected representative system,
But
and that's why it's
but
better?
my
Or
system of fascism has elected representatives.
okay,
They just don't get
they're
to
just
be
more
people
qualified
who
in your
don't
opinion.
know anything.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I understand that these people would also receive licenses or, like the right to work in this field. But we already have that. We already have people with licenses who operate
But
as
only for their
physicians or
job,
nurses,
not
but
for
only
their
for their job. But
not for their legislative responsibilities.
exactly. And each legislative kind of thing that you set up is for that specific thing. So you elect people, they represent you, your ideas, what you want, but you don't get to vote if you're not a citizen. You don't get to
Right.
vote on who is the medical representative unless you were a medical professional.
Right.
You don't get to vote
I see.
on who is a thing unless you are expertise there as well.
I see. Which also would motivate the individual to be like, well, I should
Better
seek some expertise then in some field so that I can be represented.
Yeah. And just like, you
Interesting.
wouldn't want a bunch of spineless people making gun laws. Well, we would have exactly the opposite in the fascist system. The people who know about guns elect their representatives about firearms and weaponry. I'm sure it'd be gunsmiths, soldiers, distributors, dealers with, those kinds of things, actual experience with firearms. They would make the laws. And if that committee of people can't come to like a good idea, maybe they meet a different committee. Maybe the gun committee and the medical committee come together and they have a joint vote, or they have a joint kind of bill they present to the dictator, can we vote on this? Because that's going to be one of the things that will be present, is that if you make a bill that is obviously injurious to the people, the dictator has to look over it. The dictator has to look and see, oh no, you can't do this.
Actually, the more you say the word dictator, like I'm thinking in my head, like think of the word dictator, like diction, right?
Yes.
What is diction? It's the written word, right? A dictator, like when we say, oh well, you dictated these, my boss dictated these duties to me, like those are my responsibilities. It's like all in, like the idea of a dictator is very demonized, like, oh my God, he's going to impose all this evil on us because of, because of people like Mussolini, Stalin, Hitler, these, who's the Chinese communist dictator that I'm
Mao.
not thinking? Mao, yeah. So because of all these people that come before us that have been so evil with their power, but when you think of the actual word dictator, it's like a dictator just assigns responsibility. That's literally all they do. So if you had a benevolent dictator, they would look at a situation and say, okay, well, we're going to hold this party, this company, this party, this individual, we're going to hold them responsibility in this case. Okay, bring me the next case. Let me look at it. And they would literally just be a decision maker, which just like in sales, when you go into a business, who do you want to speak to? You want to speak to the decision maker.
Yeah.
You don't proposition and give a pitch to someone who is like
a janitor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know anything about that. I'm not a decision maker here. It's like, okay, get me in front of a decision maker so that we can have some resolution to this. But I guess that's the big fear again of dictatorship and one singular figurehead is that like people are like, well, what if they make the wrong decision, or what if they're influenced to intentionally make malevolent decisions for their own sake, their family's sake, their friends' sake, whoever their little ties are, which is why in my world, I'm like, that's why I want to invert the pyramid, because then you can actually seek the interest of your family. You can seek the interest of yourself and the people around you, and you seek it first. I don't seek the interest of them. I might feel sympathy for the Middle Eastern Arabic refugee. I may feel sorry for the position that they're in, that my country bombed their country, or that some other country bombed their country and they live in a hot, arid climate and they don't have, and I feel sympathy for it. And yet I don't make decisions for that person across the world. I make decisions for my wife. I make decisions for my child. I make decisions for my household first and foremost. And then my neighbors who live and border my property make decisions as well. And then we try to make decisions who say, hey, we're a conglomerate. Why would you encroach on my property? You want me to encroach on yours, right? We make decisions. It allows you to make decisions for your own best interest and yet also for the greater good at the same time, if you give power back to the individual first and foremost. And I feel like that's what the founding fathers tried to do, was say, hey, we're not going to be, because the founding fathers didn't want to live under the king anymore, because they came to a new land and thought, well, dude, we live way across the ocean now, and you're going to tax us? Like, why am I paying you? Honestly, what are we paying you for? We have resources here. I think we can just build our own thing. And they decided that the king isn't going to decide anymore. We're going to decide. We're going to take it down to the community level. We're going to form a document of principles that all will be governed by, but it will be brief. I mean, dude, they wrote the Declaration of Independence on a couple sheets of paper. You know what I mean? We're passing one law today. It's 5,000 pages and nobody read it,
Yeah.
So they just jotted down on a couple sheets of paper and said, hey, these sound like some pretty good principles for us to live by. Let the people govern themselves beyond this, as long as they're within this framework, And that's why people in this country are so like, you can't violate the Constitution. When people say, oh, it's a dated document, it's, oh, it was a different time back then. It's like, yeah, but they created a framework.
I love that, by the way.
That we can operate within, and you're violating that framework. And honestly, if we sat down and wrote a similar document, it would probably 90% line up with the principles that are in that document.
I don't know if we wrote it.
Oh yeah, you and I don't know. Well, I think I would, because I do tend towards the individual being the most power. I truly think the individual is the most powerful thing that exists in reality.
Well, you should say politically, because
No,
the individual, one man doesn't beat 20.
And yet one man can, in a miracle sense. There is a way for one man to set it up to where he can beat
Well,
20.
if you had a
And
machine
you
gun.
see the stories of the one man who challenged the system and rose. I mean, again, the archetype of Donald Trump was
Oh,
a very similar thing where one man took on the system
yeah.
and they couldn't, and they uh, degraded him and denigrated him and every other D word. And also they demonized him. There's a D word. They basically wrote him off and were
Yeah.
like, one man cannot beat our system. But the one man, through his belief and confidence, inspired so many people to
Yeah.
rally beneath him that they were like, oh, holy shit, we forgot about the power of
Yeah.
the people, and which is why
Oh, wait. Who are we talking about? Trump or Hitler?
I'm talking about how Trump.
Because Adolf did the same thing.
No, and that's why
Yeah.
people drew so many parallels. But
Yeah.
the only thing is Adolf Hitler put people in concentration camps allegedly, and Donald Trump never wanted to put anybody in any sort of camp or get rid of them in any kind of similar way like that.
Listen, the concentration camps are, that's a whole,
It's a whole nother episode.
that's a whole nother episode.
and
That's
he-
a, look
let-
up, just here's my brief on it. It's so strange that all of the camps that the Allies liberated were just regular camps.
Right.
But all the camps the communists liberated were death camps.
And that's when you stop and you just say, look into it.
Yeah.
You know what
and,
I mean?
And see,
Because I'm
we
not
were
a,
going
I'm not a
to.
I'm not a big history guy,
am.
and I haven't really looked into it to the level. But what I have looked into, let's just say that I have some questions, and guess what? There's nothing wrong with questioning things, man. It's so annoying, the idea that like, oh, you question a narrative, you're evil, you're racist, you're
Yeah.
against whatever. It's like, I'm sorry, answer my question and explain it to me, and show me how I've been misguided or I have misinformation, and show me, and just show me the truth. If it's so true, just tell me what the truth is and show me the facts. Show me the history so that I can understand it. Otherwise, when I go looking, I find a lot of discrepancies that lead me to questioning things. And when you don't allow people to ask questions anymore, that's how you know you don't live in any sort of freedom whatsoever. If you can't ask a question, if you can't doubt the official narrative, then you don't live in a free society.
Yeah.
It's just how it is.
Let me pee again.
Well, let me ask you this before you pee.
Damn, I have
Okay?
so much pee
just,
in me.
Just
I have
just
so
hang
much
on
piss.
because
Oh,
we're
God.
we're at 2 hours and 20 minutes. So I would say almost that I'm ready to wrap it up. I think we've had a great discussion.
I gotta piss.
I think that's really good.
I piss
So
first.
before you go piss, while you're pissing, I want you to think about what you want to close on, if there's anything else you want to say,
Sure.
or even if you want to change topics and kind of drop a closing statement on a different topic, whatever,
Sure.
and then we'll wrap it up from
All
there.
right.
So just ponder that. And for those that are still listening as we take this commercial break, which we'd like to thank our sponsors for making this possible. Check out Goats in a Pond, by the way, on YouTube. That guy puts out some killer freaking Toyota how-to content, dude. If you're looking for an up-and-comer in the Toyota vehicle how-to game, okay, it's freaking Goats in a Pond, and there's no doubt about that. So I think we've had an interesting discussion with my anonymous guest today. I hope no one will be too quick to judge, as most people. No, you know what? I'm not going to say most people, as sometimes people can be quick to judge. You talk about certain topics or certain individuals or things that people might use the word triggering, or a lot of topics and individuals come with like this baggage of history and discrepancy and who knows really what the truth is and whatever, but it all comes loaded with these things where it's just like, well, I hear these certain things and I'm not going to listen, or I'm not going to consider this. So I would encourage anyone who is listening, anyone who made it this far, maybe I should even clip this and I'll say something like this at the beginning of the podcast too before you listen, to just the idea is like no one here, like in this podcast today, is taking these ideas and forcing them on you, oppressing you with them, or making you change your lifestyle to live out what we're saying. So there's no reason to be offended or feel disrespected or feel like we don't have a position where we can have a discussion like this. Because the truth is, if we don't have these discussions, if we don't shoot holes in arguments, and we don't steel man arguments, and we don't straw man arguments, like if we're not willing to do that, then we're actually not willing to consider anything that can make us better. And that's just the truth of it. If you're not willing to hear ideas that you disagree with, or that make you feel a certain way, then you're actually not interested in getting better in any kind of way. And you need to admit that to yourself. Like you're sold on what you see is right, and you don't want to consider anything else. But if you're what they call open-minded, then you're willing to consider ideas that don't fit your worldview, if for no other reason than to strengthen your position. Like I will personally listen to things that I don't agree with intentionally, to strengthen my own argument and strengthen my own position, strengthen my own conviction in what I do believe. So, if anyone has made it to this point and is still listening, I would encourage you to adopt that attitude and try to listen with an open mind, to consider principles other than those that you've either developed yourself or that have been ingrained in you. There's no harm in listening to ideas, and weighting them against your own, and deciding what you think is right. That decision lies in the individual.
I guess in closing on fascism,
ABC, always be closing.
consider the society you live in now and what fascism truly is. And maybe educate yourself, not by listening to other people, but going to the primary sources, the people who wrote the books. Read some Mosley, read some Mussolini, read some Adolf, and consider what they say about fascism. Also, race is 95% a feeling. That's it.
There you have it. Well, very interesting discussion. Probably my favorite episode so far, I think. It's very, very, yeah, I just love that we talked about ideas that I'm sure people think you shouldn't
Have.
talk about.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have these thoughts, whatever. And like I was saying in my statement while you were pissing, there's nothing wrong with, if for no other reason, I hope the people who don't agree with these things or think, oh, you're missing all these points and this is why your argument is weak. Good. I hope this made your argument stronger.
Yeah, I hope it makes
The
their
whole
argument
point
stronger
of
as well.
the whole point of the Edge Condition podcast is to identify how things bump up against each other. And that's the nature of reality, is things bumping into each other. And in that contact is where we find the truth.
Yeah. What conditions of reality create the edge to the other condition of reality?
Are you asking me, or are you
No, I'm
stating
saying that
I
is
see.
what that is.
Right, exactly.
One condition creates an edge and separates it from another portion of reality,
Right.
another edge.
And that's exactly what reality is. So if you're not willing to explore ideas, then that's fine. Just be stuck in your
Bubble.
I mean, it's almost like a what's the word for it? Mono idealistic.
Monoculture.
Yeah, just be stuck in, monoculture is a good word for it. Just be stuck in your individual singularity.
Yeah.
How about that? Like, if you've achieved the singularity of thought and all your thoughts have unified where they don't have to be questioned and there's nothing left for you to learn and there's no systems and you have all the facts, everything's in, and you know what's right to a way that there's no reason, then I guess you wouldn't be listening to this in the first place.
Well, in that person who thinks that all of their things are right and correct at all times, you should still read the works of the fascists. You should still read them. And if your worldview and your ideals are so weak that you think that reading those books would change your mind, how strong were they in the first place?
Good point. And as Andy Stanley said, everyone has good reasons for what they believe. So if you have good reasons for what you believe, then you shouldn't be scared to challenge your beliefs. So With that, I think I'll sign off. Thanks for being on, my anonymous guest, and
It was a pleasure.
I really enjoyed it personally.
Yeah, good time.
So I hope the audience, the listening audience, the viewing audience, will enjoy it just the same. I thank you, the audience, for giving it a listen. And you can shoot us a thumbs up. You can drop a subscribe. You can do none of those things. You can drop a comment, a dislike, whatever is your pleasure. I'm not here to control you. We'll leave that to the fascist dictatorship. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for watching. I hope this was as entertaining for you as it was for me. And if not, well,